luckily for me, I had a thirst for knowledge that I actually read a book or two outside of school and learned some things on my own, but a lot of people don't have that drive or even care to do that.
Mage podcast here. It's 10:30. That's the date, not the time. It's October 30th, day before Halloween, 2013. And I haven't done a podcast in quite a while, but I got a couple interesting, intelligent gentlemen in the studio right now in Mage Studios in West. Well, I can't even say where we're at. It's a funny place, but I can't tell you where we're at. But anyways, we got a new guest in the house. You've heard Jake Duesenberg before. He's right here. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Dude, it's a pleasure to be back. I thought you would have advertisers at this point, Mage. Like, I listen to Joe Rogan. He's always talking about the fleshlight. I figured the fleshlight was going to get on your podcast and advertise.
Wow, this is taking an interesting turn. But I've always wondered by listening to commercials about the fleshlight, what the fleshlight's actually about. And by saying that, maybe Joe Rogan will mail me one. Otherwise, I'm not buying a fleshlight. If I did, I would pay in foreign cash or silver or something that's not traceable. Because if you have a credit card statement, like you got to prove that you were at this place one time. And they're like, see, I was at Super America on Washington Avenue. And right before that, it looks like Tom Major bought a fleshlight at Washington Avenue on Sex World. The news, they're such assholes. They'd probably just blank it out with like a pencil where you could see through it. Like, they'd blank out the whole thing. Like, this gentleman proved he was at the Super America, and it says like fleshlight right above it.
I just think it's hilarious, like the demographic he goes to. Like his top 3 sponsors: fleshlight, some like supplement, and then like some vitamin. Every freaking podcast.
But that's perfect.
Yeah, I know.
Perfect.
So what's the advertiser for Mage's podcast? That's my question.
Well, it's along those lines because I think it would be big dick pills because there's, you know what I mean? It's along those lines. And that's not a joke I made up or anything. It seriously would be big dick pills because someone was like talking about, okay, if they invented a big dick pill that you could take and your dick would literally grow, it would be the most amazing product, and it would not be sold at 3 a.m. on super cheap advertising time. Like, it would take over the world. It would be the biggest product that there is. So the tipping, like, anyone who understands basic economics should never buy a big dick pill is what they're saying. Because no one's buying them if they're advertising it only 3 in the morning.
I don't know what you're trying to say, though. Like, the people that listen to your show are a bunch of dumbasses, or
not
are they a bunch
show.
of dudes with a bunch of small penises?
Oh, you mean Joe Rogan's show? Because
no, I'm talking about your show. Who would be your advertiser? I thought you were saying Big Dick Pill would be your advertiser.
I just thought, like, there's no way I'm trying to advertise on anything, so that's the best answer because it's classic.
It's authentic.
I guess. I don't know. Well, we're talking about big dick pills, and we're probably going to talk about some other interesting things, but there's economics behind everything.
That's
Jake
right.
Duesenberg's a great guest. He's a dude that knows quite a bit about economics. Someone that I feel like I learn from quite often. And a person sitting to the left of Jake here, who I'm super excited to have on, Dave Benner. And, I just actually met him today. I've seen some of the stuff he's done on the Constitution. It's awesome. And, hey, thanks for coming. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think it was a little bit of a stretch for you to call us intelligent beings, I think, in your intro.
I know, but it's like commercials. You got to hype stuff.
Gotta hype.
No, I thought it was fitting.
Thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of your work. I like your interviews and stuff.
Oh, thanks, man.
Thank you.
And I got to say, we just started. We cooked a duck, and I basically used Old Bay seasoning, tried to crisp up the top in a little olive oil and garlic, and then we did some jasmine rice with butter, and then we sautéed pork, stir-fry type stuff, and then the duck's heart together, and then we ate that, and that was awesome.
And this isn't a domesticated duck. This is the duck I shot this morning in the marsh.
And that's actually serious. Was it an hour? What's it take? An hour to get down there? South of the cities. I won't tell them the secret spot, but
yeah, I was like,
we're already pinpointing it via time and distance. But
I'm from the East Metro, so it takes me an hour to get that spot. I'm up at 4.
Okay.
I get up at 4. I get over there. I'm in the spot at 5. Meet my buddy. We're in Iraq together. We get out there. We portage our canoe down to this pond. We got 24 decoys. We set this thing up, and we shoot a couple ducks just so I could feed Mage tonight at his podcast. That's the whole point of why I did that this morning.
You have to come bearing gifts, right?
I came bearing gifts. No frankincense Goldamer is pure Gadwell duck from the pond in Minnesota.
Well, we all like to go on rants, as you can tell. Dave will, I assume, go on some rants as well about the Constitution because we're going to squeeze him for knowledge from time to time. He knows certain things about the early parts of this country where I've kind of learned about them myself. But and my friends are like, oh, it's always coming out of your mouth, you know, and I'm talking about things I've been reading or whatever. But it's always fun when you get around other people who have different knowledge. It's almost like a puzzle. Some people may have other pieces of that puzzle, like McDonald's Monopoly and shit, you know.
That's the perfect analogy.
Yeah, so
yes.
that's exactly what we're playing. We're playing like history, McDonald's Monopoly game here.
I love that game.
And
yeah.
Here's how you get pieces. You cook crazy stuff and then you drink beers.
And that's what
and
we're
then
doing.
More pieces.
Yeah,
That's
we're
how you
drinking
get
a lot of craft beers tonight, man. We always do that when we're podcasting, right?
Absolutely. I have a Ballast Point Brewing Company. Shout out to Grant Rango. He loves them. I got the Big Eye IPA. And all I know is I really haven't drank Ballast Point. I don't know if you guys have.
Yeah, I have.
You like that? Because my buddy's a fan of their Sculpin IPA, but it was several dollars more, and I don't think the alcohol was any different. It's like 7% on both. So I don't know what the secret is. I'll have to ask my buddy or the 3 people that listen. You know, one of them is going to have been to San Diego and know this answer. They'll text it to me. They'll put it on the show or something.
Yeah.
But anyways, you got the Amber Alaskan.
Yeah, Alaskan Amber. I mean, that's me there. You know, I love Alaska. I was salmon fishing there a couple months ago. And my favorite kind of beer is the amber beer. You know, that roasted malt, the caramel malts. Oh, man, I love that flavor in a beer.
You, Dave, you had that for the first time tonight or no?
No, it was not for the first time today,
okay.
although I brought a 6-pack of a Singapore brew called Tiger. And it is a rice-based brew. Likened to that of the Japanese brews, I think. Pretty good one. Kind of a little bit more on the lager side, but it's pretty good.
I think the alcohol can vary on that. I'm not sure. Do you know what the alcohol is or no?
I really don't.
It's
can't
all right.
say, actually.
Here's why I ask, because I thought here we were getting 5% Tiger beer, which is like a Budweiser's a 5%. And at one time I bartended for like a summer in Ireland. And so there was like end of drinking time. Actually, I should tell you a story about the economics of this place too, even though I didn't say the name. So yeah, it's cool. So like there's a drink up time where we basically would close the bar, but the nightclub, which opened at midnight, I'd be there like 10, and then it closed at like, I don't know, 3 or something like that. All the pubs close at like 11:30 in Ireland. So literally nightclubs are sweet because you're waiting for this drunk crowd that already exists right outside your place somewhere within blocks. They gotta come, right? Like you're the only thing open is the clubs. And so at like midnight, it would just go from 0 to pack. Like people just pour in. And so at the end of the night, they had like these bouncers out front with like tuxedos and then this like old Irish gate, and then you had to walk up a path to pay to get in the actual club. So cops would come to check. But we had all those like Metrodome style grates that you could pull down over the bar and close it like no one was behind it.
Yep.
So they'd be on their radios, and like once or twice in those summer, cops would come and they'd be like radioing up like cops are here or whatever. Garda, that's what they call them in Ireland, like the Garda are here, you know. So we'd be like, oh shit, and we'd all like psh, 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 take these bottles and push them either forwards or backwards off the bar to create like a garage door space down the middle, and we go and close the door, and then we close the door to that thing and be cleaning. Everyone and you start cleaning, and then if they even looked, which I don't even know if they did, like you're cleaning.
Yeah.
And so it's like, think of how much money through, I mean, you know, civil, let's call that capitalism, civil disobedience.
You're not helping Irish stereotypes here at all.
Oh my God, dude, this is scratching, because this isn't
perfect.
even, this is crazy. But no, here we got one beer from the time that we closed the bar to the time we were done cleaning. So right when they closed the bar, everyone grabbed Tiger. That's how it came back to this. Because I think it was 7 or 8%. Or whatever they got in Ireland was like the strongest, and I think it was like a 20-ounce bottle they even were selling.
Wow.
And everyone else a 12. So it was like, okay, I get 1 hour to mingle with this crowd of drunk Irish people, and then I gotta go clean. So everyone wants the most booze. You gotta have a Tiger.
Yeah.
But I don't think that story is true here. I just don't.
No.
It tastes like Bud, I mean, as far as the content, I think, so.
You said you were in China, and you can talk about your beer experience there, I think, if you want, because
Yeah. I pretty much lived off a beer called Qingdao. It's based in Qingdao, which is in the Shandong Peninsula region. It was settled by early Germans, actually, and the Germans brought the kind of the facilitation for the Chinese to learn how to brew, actually. So I kind of lived off that. And then there's another one that's native to Beijing itself called Yanjing. And that one's good too. But Qingdao, sometimes you'll hear Americans pronounce it as Tsingtao. but that one is a common one that you can find here actually.
Oh, maybe I have had
I
that.
think you've given me a bottle or
Very
something.
carbonated.
Yeah.
I prefer the Japanese brews more than that, but it's a decent.
Like Sapporo.
Sapporo's my
Sapporo
favorite
fan.
beer.
Oh, really?
Favorite beer, sir.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
Although they
I
moved
drink it. I like it.
They moved the brewery to somewhere in Canada, though. I think Ontario. So I don't know. That's a little sketchy, but
Yeah, I mean, I heard that some companies. I heard that Heineken brewed in Canada one time. I think it was when I was in Ireland, so they could import here and still call it imported. But then years later, when I was in Amsterdam, I went to the Heineken brewery or whatever it is, the brew museum, and I thought they said that everything comes from there, similar to Guinness, because everything comes from St. James Gate in Dublin for Guinness. But I don't know. But it's tricky because I know like a lot of people will do that just so they can claim it's imported.
Yeah.
Right. Have you ever broken a bottle to find that little wing nut that they put in the Guinness or
Yeah.
whatever it is? I've
Yeah.
never seen
The
that. I think
widget.
it's like a mythological. I think it's like Bigfoot. To find
There's
that
two
thing.
different kinds. There's a ball which comes in the cans,
Sure.
and then there's like the long, skinny, bone type looking triangle thing, and that's in the bottles. Must be so they can get it. In the
I think
bottle.
it's a myth. I'll have to have this proven to me.
What do you mean
at
it's a
some
myth?
point.
You can freaking hear the
Yeah,
thing when you're...
you know it's got nitrogen in
Just
it.
trying to be a little facetious here.
Oh no,
Yeah.
totally, dude, totally,
All right.
man. Yeah, no, it's got. That's what's so crazy because I'm not smart enough to figure out how the nitrogen does. You know, like it doesn't come out until you open the can, and then it's like, psh, obviously pressure release it, whatever. But that's cool. That's a cool invention.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're carbonating your beer, so they're just adding nitrogen. I mean, it's just a different style to their beer production.
No, for
Oh.
sure. But that frickin' widget wasn't invented until I think this is gonna sound funny, but I think it's like '89. I'm just
Oh, no
guessing.
shit.
I think it was 1989,
Oh.
something like that. I learned all these facts when I was out there in Ireland, but it's weird because I would ask people like, "Oh, don't they drink warm beer?" And everyone would tell me no. Like, no, that's it's a culture because of lack of refrigeration.
Yeah.
And that's what I was told always out there. And so I never saw it except for when I went to like distant relatives or people more in the hills, like on the border of Northern Ireland, County Monaghan and stuff. And it, like there'd be a bookcase with some Guinness Extra Stout, like the non-nitrogenated stuff. That's the CO2 stuff.
Yeah.
And then it'd be warm. And then they'd be like, "Oh, you want a beer?" And then they'd be like, "Oh, shoot!" And they'd quick grab it, and then they'd run and put it in the freezer because they knew like you wouldn't want a warm beer, but they just didn't care, I guess. So there's something like I'm not disagreeing that Germans or Irish don't drink beer warm. A lot of people tell me they do, and I'm like, I didn't see it.
I think it
times
depends on the
changed.
brew, right? Some are kind of made to be drank at a certain temperature.
Right, like darker, fruitier
Like wines
flavors can be drank pretty warm. But, I mean, you wouldn't drink a lager warm. I mean, you would spit it out. It's like Mississippi water. So
Yeah.
you got to have that stuff cold.
I want
mean, like,
my-
it's what they talk about in the Coors commercials, you know?
Yeah.
They always got the guy that's scaling some ice wall, and he comes up and he reaches in this hole, and it comes into the back of a bar, and he hands the person ice cold Coors, and it's... Dude, of course he's going to hand him ice cold Coors. If you hand him a warm one, people would spit that crap out because it doesn't taste that good.
Check this out. When I served Guinness in Ireland, there was 2 taps. Well, sometimes 2 taps of regular Guinness. One for pouring the first pour. Let me grab one of the beers. What we got in here?
Sorry, I ruined your story.
Oh no, you didn't. I'll take a Tiger.
try to
right now.
refill,
It's
man.
my first Tiger. I gotta take one of these.
Dude, I'm gonna go for this Third
Tiger.
Street Brown Ale again.
Tiger.
I liked it.
Tiger uppercut.
Oh my god.
Street
But no,
Fighter fans
oh
out
yeah,
there.
yeah. Street Fighter. I should add him some like. But no, like the Guinness. Check this out. For marketing, when I was there, one of the things they had was for 10 cents more on tap. It was Guinness Extra Cold, and it was guaranteed to be at like, let's say 36 degrees or something.
Oh no, Ken.
Yeah, so like because people like cold draft Guinness, and I don't blame them because that was my favorite thing, man. So good out there, and it's like everything's drank within like a week.
But see, like Guinness is really flavorful, so I would drink that stuff warmer than like a lagered beer, like a crappy riced out lager Budweiser.
The colder you drink it, in my opinion, the more like the milkiness hits you. It's like a glass of milk.
Yeah.
The warmer you drink it, the more coffee and.
But see, yeah, that's what I
Nutty.
love. Is I love that coffee kind of malt
Yup.
flavor. Oh, I love that.
But there used to be these things called pyramid nuts, and they were like peanuts that were that like Cajun dry coating, like
Yeah.
the salty, like baking in the bar, and you could just smell them if you sat near it at the bar. So we'd be drinking at all times of day, especially on the weekends if you're with your buddies, which are my coworkers. So they just hung out. It was perfect. Made friends and just hung out, and we'd go drink ice cold Guinness and eat these like warm, salty nuts. Think about that. I mean, the contrast. It's like a cold glass of milk and warm nuts.
What could be better?
So I'm drinking this Third Street Brew. Speaking of nut, brown nut ale.
Yeah.
It's called the Lost Trout. This is good stuff. This is a
I like that stuff.
This is a local brew, right?
Is that the Cold Spring one?
No, well, yeah, it's called Third Street. Let me just check.
I think
where
that's the
Cold Spring,
one.
Minnesota.
Heck yeah.
Yeah,
man.
Cold Spring. Well, it could just be
Cold Spring.
brewed by Third Street Brew House, Cold Spring, Minnesota.
Yup.
They got a
I've
bottling
driven right by
company
it.
over there.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, people just like make companies everywhere, and then they just use major brewers once they hit
Right,
production,
I think that's what Cold
Fulton
Spring is.
did it.
Yeah,
They
I think
did it.
Cold Spring is just like a. It's probably a contract brewer over there. I want to say because they got a couple different labels, but that's a pretty good beer. I like that.
Yeah. You know that Fulton Sweet Child
Sweet Child of Vine, yeah.
Yeah. That for a while was like all I drank, and I didn't think I could get sick of something, but I basically got sick of that.
Oh, did you really?
And so now,
Wow.
I don't know. I used to just say like, "There's not a better beer in the world." I'd go to a steak dinner, I'd have one. I'd go to the bar, I'd have one. Whatever. And I was just like,
You might come back around. I mean, I
hope
had
so.
that feeling about Honey Vice. Like Honey Vice is what I drank in college.
I got sick of that.
And then I got sick of it.
Yeah.
But now, like, it'll be, if there's just a bunch of Miller and Coors, and then they got the Honey Vice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go for the Honey Vice.
What
I
is
don't
the
mind
Honey
doing
Vice flavor? It's like this barley attack or something.
Wheat.
What it's
It's
wheat, isn't it?
it. Yeah, it's got like a weed thing, and
But
it's
I
got
love
the
wheat
lemony
beers.
citrus. So
But it's a different. It hits you. Like
American
this,
wheat, I guess, is the category B. So
This grainy. I don't know. It doesn't remind me of a Belgium or like a Franziskaner or German wheat or a Paulaner.
no,
or
not even
whatever.
close to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an American wheat. It's like a filtered wheat, light on the wheat side of the. I don't know,
with real Wisconsin honey.
probably.
Have you ever made a wheat beer when you were
Oh, yeah.
brewing? Yeah, like a
Yeah,
Hefeweizen
you know
style.
what? You know what? When I used to homebrew, we did this oatmeal wheat because I love
Yeah.
oatmeal. It gives that like
Yeah.
smooth, silky taste to it.
Yeah.
And we did that. I've never seen anyone else do that before. And we had a couple batches that turned out real well, but it was really hard to replicate. I don't know why. But
Well, I guess
It was
anything
smooth
home
and
brews
great.
can be tough to replicate.
yeah, I can, but it's something about the oatmeal and the wheat. Like, it wasn't made to be, but yet every once in a while we'd come across a recipe that just, we nailed it. And I loved it. It was a great beer.
Do you ever homebrew, Dave?
No, I have not, but I know this guy was a connoisseur of doing such, but it's never really been my thing, I guess. It sounds like all of us are well-mannered in the arts of craft brew, though, in some regard.
I enjoy 90% everything, so I just consider myself just a avid beer fan. You know, it's just the
It's a free
You- you
market.
have-
That's what I love about it.
well.
Talk about economics.
Yeah, man.
I mean, it's
do
like
it.
the greatest.
There's the transition because I was
No,
just
it
about
really
to
is.
transition into that last time. I was just about to say last time we talked, there was that you're talking about the tier system they had with distributors, and how
Right.
distributors just basically have this caste system that is supported by the state in a way because of the laws and how they're set up. So, anyways, yeah, that's
Well, you could talk about so many economic principles with the brewing industry. I mean, like, and this is a constitutional thing. The 18th Amendment of the Constitution outright forbid people from brewing a beer and consuming beer.
For about 10 years.
Right. And I always make the argument you can never, government, no matter what, can never completely squash a market because a black market will emerge. And of course, we had the speakeasies and people had their beers and they had their hard liquors, right?
and a black market is the market.
Free trade.
Yeah, I mean,
That's a,
a market.
synonymous term for black market. Is
Right, a
free
market
trade.
will
I
always
always just
take
say
place.
it's the like El Nino is
Yeah,
Spanish
El
for
Nino.
the Nino. You know?
You know?
It's like black market. Oh, the market.
Well, why do you have to have a black market? Because like some
Because there
government,
market racists out there everywhere.
well, 'cause some government tyrant, this tyrannical government says you can no longer do business in this kind of industry, and so they have to take it underground. And so, I mean, there's so many other economic principles, like how regulation kills the small business guy, and that's what we were talking about with the 3-tier system. Like all the big guys, they had this all the regulations. Like, you couldn't even homebrew in states. It was against the law to homebrew beer. So how are you ever going to start a brewery if you can't even homebrew?
Yeah.
It's like, how could you ever start a restaurant if you can't cook your own recipes? Like, it's illegal to cook at home. Well, that's essentially what was happening in the brewing industry. So once those laws changed, then it took, a decade or so, but eventually people started experimenting with all these different types of recipes, and lo and behold, now you have the craft beer emergence in America, and I go and make the bold statement that we have the best beer in the world. Some people think that's crazy talk.
I think we do.
But we do because...
I think we do.
Because the entrepreneurial spirit is here.
Yeah.
Because entrepreneurial spirit.
I would say that's 100% true. I was more thinking like, how do you describe why it is? But that's why any description you give is the way it is.
Exactly. Like, we experiment with different flavors.
What I was going to say...
Because it's the entrepreneur knows that there's a market for it. What, a coffee beer. I don't want to drink a coffee beer.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want a caffeinated beer. But someone does.
Yep.
I think Surly is junk. I love their market.
You like Bender?
No, I think Surly is a terrible beer. I do not like the taste.
Furious is probably my favorite beer.
I do not like the taste
the whole world.
of Surly, but their marketing is great. But guess what? Enough people like Surly, and that entrepreneur now is building a $25 million brew pub expansion in Minneapolis. Wonderful, creating jobs and economic activity because there's that profit incentive.
Yep.
And all because he's able to take a, 30, 40 years ago, beer was that light lager, brewed with rice. And now he says, I'm going to mix in, these hops, and I'm going to do a hop schedule that's 60 minutes, 90 minutes long, whatever they are. And I've got a whole market of people that want that hoppy beer.
You know why they call it IPA?
Indian Pale. I do.
Do you know why? Tell me.
It's because the British ships used to ship their beer, and hops were first used as preservatives, so they'd have these big barrels on those ships, and they'd put the hops in to preserve the beer during the long voyages, because obviously they didn't have the refrigeration we have nowadays.
Yeah.
And as they found out, like, when it'd get to India, like, the hops would have that aroma, and it was a very desired taste, and the bitterness of it, too, was kind of desired by people. And so that's kind of where they got the Indian Pale Ale term.
Everything you said up until the very last is how I understood it. How I understood it, though, was not because that they just grew to like this aroma. What I understood it was more a way of transporting more, like, the higher alcohol they produced it, the longer it would last, and the more hops they used, the longer it would last. So it was purely economic. So they would transfer it over there, and it was more concentrated beer because then you could water it down.
Yeah.
And so the people that were back in England didn't ever catch on for a really long time, unless they were like people in that industry, like the blue collar sailing people or something like that. But yeah, it was basically forced upon the people in India is how I understood it, and it was just like an economic reason why they drank it. It wasn't like no one liked it, but it was a way to, you had shit beer basically. You had like strong shit beer that you could water down.
The funny thing is, like, so many people like the IPA.
Well, for me, it's my favorite.
Well, yeah, it's like it's got to be one of the most popular categorical beers in the craft brew industry. I don't like IPAs that much, although the beer that I was going to bring you, because like before we were going to podcast, T-Mage, like, we all bring our favorite six-pack, and I was going to actually bring Dogfish as 90-minute IPA. Great beer. It's not
I've had that.
Yeah, it's not sold here in the area anymore, so I couldn't get it. But that's what I was going to bring a choice. But I generally don't like those IPAs. I'm an amber guy. I like those caramel malts. I like the smoked
I'm
malts.
on board.
You guys are amber guys for sure.
Yeah, Fat Tire is one of my favorites.
Fat
for
Tire's
sure.
Oh, that's one of my favorites too.
That is actually pretty.
hard to
That's
beat
got a
the
good
taste.
hop schedule though.
It's got a super like caramel chocolate to it or something.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost literally a chocolate bar flavor somewhere in a Fat Tire.
Yeah, almost basically.
Like if you took those Irish nuts and covered them in chocolate. Nutty chocolateness.
That's right.
And the warmer it is, the more the flavor comes out.
Yeah, if the federal government ever prohibited beer again, I would hope that the states nullified that.
Yeah, me too.
Bender's a big advocate for nullification.
I think they very much could, on the premises that the 10th Amendment acknowledges that all the powers not enumerated to the federal government under the Constitution are to be controlled by the states and or the people. So,
Right.
yes.
I mean, we couldn't have this
concur.
conversation. We couldn't be drinking these fine beers if the federal government was tyrannical again and prohibited this whole industry.
I know
that was actually 100 years ago. Wasn't that 1913 that the 18th Amendment passed?
No, it's true, man.
I think it was Woodrow Wilson's.
1920?
No. 1919 was the 19th Amendment. So the 18th would have been before 1919.
1920 was the 19th Amendment.
Okay. So
But
it was under
it
Woodrow
would have
Wilson.
had to have been before 20.
So at least we're coming
19.
up on the 100th anniversary
Yeah, I think like 1919.
of the federal
somewhere in
government prohibiting what we're doing here in your
God, isn't that
podcast studio.
amazing? It just it reminds you, I think, when you can categorize a century with like almost just 3 lifespans,
Right.
33 years each or something, and then just say, oh, that's just a few lifespans ago. It makes it like feel so real.
Right.
When you're like 12 and 15 and you start learning stuff, it feels still so distant, and then you get to be 20, 25, whatever, and then I don't know. There's a lot of differences that you
Our
see.
grandparents would have lived under Prohibition.
Yeah.
So
No, that's what I mean. Yeah.
that's crazy.
I don't know, man. I mean, there's a million things that are prohibited.
Would you
Well, that's what's up.
Oh, I was just going to ask, would you gentlemen frequent speakeasies if they were around today?
Yeah, that's-
Under the cover of
I don't like to.
illegal sanction?
Yeah, I don't like to divulge any illegal activity on air ever.
Oh,
but,
I mean,
but I'll tell you
wait.
what. If there was a speakeasy, man, I would found it. There wouldn't be one. I'd have the first one.
Yeah.
So there wouldn't be a speakeasy. I would make the speakeasy.
I mean, how dare I suggest such a thing?
Yeah.
I don't know what I was talking about.
Do not put me on that list. Right now in the NSA, they're listening.
Yeah.
I know you just threw me on the speakeasy in the future list, but just rip me off of that list. I don't want to be on that one.
They could never get away with that today, though.
Then
At
you know
least in
those
my
fuckers,
opinion.
they'd approach you and they'd be like, "Here, oh, you got an empty beer bottle in your backyard." I'd be like, "That wasn't mine." They'd be like, "Well, here's what we're gonna do. You're gonna go and ask everyone if they're in a speakeasy, and you're gonna tell us, and then we're gonna."
They're going to ban beer cases that are 6 bottles or less. Oh,
Yeah.
6 or more, I should say.
How many beer cans?
You have
in your
more than
clip?
6 brews
Oh.
in there. I don't know. You could get more drunk by having that.
Can you imagine that if Mayor Michael Bloomberg could if he managed like WeFest or something? like there'd be like Dixie cups of Busch Light. And you'd have to like show your ID in a massive line just to get one every time. The hot dogs would be those little like graduation party wieners in the crock pot.
It's a good thing he wasn't around for Woodstock, because wasn't that New York?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in like upstate or something.
Yeah.
Oh,
Dude, that guy's so out of touch. Like, all
I
the
don't
younger
like saying
generation.
people suck, but God, he
sucks.
sucks.
Oh, he's totally
That guy sucks. We do not. I mean,
It's
yeah.
pretty rough. But
Good God.
No, tell them about. So, what was a tier system? Refresh me on that. About
Like,
the distributors basically had different legislative position, so that each person kind of fit into a role based on the legislation, right? So, if you brewed it, you couldn't distribute it on site or or something like there was
yeah,
cutoffs.
it's all state laws. I mean, after Prohibition was repealed with the 21st Amendment, like, laws got kicked down to the states. And so a bunch of states adopted this tier system. And the tier system basically says there is a difference between the person that brews the beer and the person that sells the beer, which is either like on-site, your bar or tavern, or your off-site, the guy that sells it at a liquor store and someone comes up and buys it, picks it up, and takes it home. And there's got to be a big separation between those two, and the separation is the second tier where you add another industry, a distributor. So they basically create this whole industry of beer distribution. Not that wouldn't emerge in a free market system. I guarantee some brewers would say, you know what? I know how to brew beer, but I don't know how to pack it up and truck it and take it to other people. So I would hire a third party to do that. However, when it's in the law, what it does is it forbids some people from doing commerce. And I'll give you a great case in point. If you're a liquor store, right, and a distributor is the one that's getting the beer to your shelves, right? Mm-hmm. Because the brewery can't do it themselves. Who do you think that distributor is going to represent? Budweiser, which sell its products are 50% of everything on the shelf, or Little Fulton Brewery, or what's this other one, the Third Street Brew House?
Yeah, for sure.
Who are they gonna listen to?
Yeah.
Their interests are gonna be the brew house that sells one out of every 2 beers, Budweiser.
Mm-hmm.
And then who gets hurt in this? Well, it's a small entrepreneur, the small brewer, and then us as a consumer, because we can't try these new beers. Now, luckily for us, I mean, we tell these liquor stores and these bars that we want the craft brew. So now they're saying, no, well, I don't care what the distributor says.
Yep.
I want to go find those small breweries.
The action is from the bottom up, at least in that point.
Right.
In the
And you know, in Minnesota's not the greatest case because Minnesota has a caveat to that tier system. I think if you brew under 7,000 barrels a year, you can self-distribute. And then a couple years ago, we helped change a law in Minnesota that said if you brew beer, you can also sell beer on your premise. And that was a big thing that launched this Surly $25 million project. But before that law changed, Surly couldn't do what they're doing right now.
That was a big deal because that with the whole new Twin Stadium and stuff, that was the pinnacle of that argument, wasn't it?
Yeah, and just imagine. I mean, we're talking about beer because everyone loves beer, right?
Well, not everyone, dude.
Yeah, a lot of people like beer
out there that they're like they don't like beer.
Okay, but I mean,
can you believe it?
Guys like you and I, our demographic. We love beer. We love beer, right?
Well, everyone does.
It speaks to people's heart. And by the way, the DFL tried taxing beer more. Like 500%
last
increase.
legislative session.
The last legislative session. But I mean, this is just a
Great
microcosm.
Great idea, DFL. You guys are earning your paycheck. Keep it up.
This is like a microcosm of all industries in the economy. I mean, this happens in every industry. There's barriers to entry. There's regulation that just kills the small guy. This happens in every industry. I just like talking about beer because it resonates with people like us, right?
Oh, hell yeah.
A lot of it's based on protectionist policies too, right? I get that, a lot of these local legislators have, store owners that, come to them and say, hey, we don't want to, be open on Saturday, for instance. That's another issue that came up in the last Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday
right?
liquor sale.
And then so is it the government's job to suppress economic activity if one individual does want to do that? In my estimation, the answer is no.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean,
exactly.
In Minnesota, I don't know how many of your podcast audience listens outside of Minnesota, but in Minnesota, we can't.
Heck if I know.
Yeah. We can't actually buy alcohol in Minnesota on a Sunday.
Way to put it, because I should have said that for sure. Good point.
And
some people are going to listen and go, "You guys are jacked up in the head," and we're like, "No, I mean that's what we're saying."
I live on the east side of the Twin Cities. I mean, I could throw a football and hit Hudson, Wisconsin.
Uncle Rico.
Yeah, pretty much. It's 5 miles, so I guess I can't. But you know what I'm saying? I get in my vehicle, I drive over to Hudson, Wisconsin. I've had this happen to me a number of times. I have a last-minute barbecue with some friends.
Oh, hell yeah.
On Sunday night, and I got no beer. And what I have to do, I have to go drive to Wisconsin to go buy beer because it's forbidden in Minnesota on Sundays.
It's amazing.
It's amazing, but it's such a free market.
I mean, I grew up
in
the northwest suburbs, and dudes that I knew when we were like 19, and they knew someone who was 21 or something. I mean, they would pay someone like $20 and gas or whatever, and then their older buddy would drive them all the way to Hudson on like a Sunday. Yeah. Kids I knew that were too young to drink, but they needed beer on a Sunday.
Right.
And they drive like an hour one way. Or 45
all that
minutes.
commerce is just going over
it's
the
amazing.
Border, so.
Have you ever thought why you can't get certain beers in Minnesota? Do you know you have to get licensed to sell your brand in Minnesota?
Like Spottin', right? Spotted Cow.
No, Spotted Cow. New Glarus doesn't come across the border because of this very reason. Licensing laws.
I didn't know this reason.
Yeah, I mean,
I've always known they didn't, because when you're in Wisconsin, you got to get at least a 6 of New.
Yeah, I mean,
Spotted Cow.
For
how light it is.
There are a bunch of liberals that own it, though.
Oh, really?
I know, it's crazy. Like, it's a wonderful product. It's so Wisconsin. And they came out, in support of Obamacare. I mean, they're real geniuses down there. They just know how to make beer, I guess.
Yeah, but they know how to make beer. I'll give them that.
They do. But they don't come across the border.
But you know how many people... Dude, it's scary, the reasons that people say they support Obamacare. That's what's scary. You know what I'm saying? Like, you get people, some quote unquote smart people, but I think they're just so high up. Sort of like, say Peter Schiff was wrong about everything. We found out next year, and even you believed he was wrong for some reason. Like, the dude would have to sit there with the chemical Ali face, the Americans are not coming, and they'd have to be like, oh, I'm right. I mean, look at what's his face, Art, who bet Peter Schiff $1 or whatever.
Art Lafleur, yeah.
Yeah, he was Reagan's financial guy or something, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he invented the Laffer curve and all that stuff,
Yep.
and really smart guy, I'm sure. But he's just like, oh, I think you're wrong, you know. But then, dude, anyone like that's gotta just basically, or Bernanke face it, you know, just act like, oh yes.
I don't know all these people you're talking about that support Obamacare, though. I mean, who are these? The guys that getting the freebies or what?
I don't know. I guess I don't know, because I work in an industry. I won't really get any more in detail on that, but it's an industry where people produce things, and I've never really met anyone in the entire industry that would ever support Obamacare in the whole industry.
Yeah.
And I've met, like, let's say 1,000 people in the last year, or like been in contact with professionally face to face, like maybe 1,000 people. And I couldn't, and people love to talk about politics, especially over cocktails and stuff. I don't know. I've never met one that supports Obamacare.
No,
It's interesting. Well, I think the DFL is solidly behind it. I haven't met someone in that inclination that isn't, I guess.
Yeah, but we're talking such a small segment of the population. Because, like, the average person in Minnesota that, you know, represents the Democrat Party, I guess. And for people that are not from Minnesota, we don't have Democrats here. We
So
have
they're like
the DFL, the Democrat Farmer Labor Union. And, of course, we want to call them just the DL because farmers are not part of the Democrat Party anymore. But, yeah, I mean, like, I don't think the mainstream Democrats in Minnesota would even support it. It's just those crony politicians that say, yeah.
You don't think the mainstream Democrats in
I
Minnesota?
don't know about that. I mean, like,
I don't know. I don't follow
meet some of
politics,
these
I
people in the Tea Party. We actually have Democrats that come to it. And they understand it. Like, I get asked this
Yeah,
question.
for every one of those, there's probably 5 somewhere that supports Obamacare.
Sure, but I mean, I get this question in the
It's
media.
a
Like,
pre-existing conditions statement is like enough to sway somebody in a snap of a finger. What? You can have pre-existing conditions? Oh,
Sure, but-
I'm in. I don't want to know anything else.
but-
That sounds good to me.
yeah, but like politics always hits home, and when your policy is canceled or it goes up, you know that hits home, and that's not just happening to Republicans, it's
Yeah.
happening to Democrats. I get this question from the media often, like, aren't you guys just a part of the GOP, you're part of the Republican Party and the Tea Party? And I'm like, we actually have Democrats that come to our Tea Party. The difference is I can never see us support Democratic legislators because I don't know a Democrat, either state or federally, that subscribes to our principles of free markets, fiscal responsibility, and constitution within the government. But I'm
Right.
telling you right now, there are actually Democrats, people that associate with that party, that do believe in those, and they're the old JFK Democrats.
Just to hear you say it makes me feel good.
Well, no, I
warm,
mean, I'm-
warm, fuzzy vibes in the air. You're like, wow, man, that's, I mean...
we talk about politics all the time,
think
but
about
people
the
don't.
Tea Party.
Yeah.
Think about the very first thing where it was like a Ron Paul fringe idea type thing. Ron Paul, right? Father of this modern Tea Party. He really was.
There's no father. It's
There's
not-
no
yeah.
Tea Party. I think
Well,
that's one of the
great
most
point.
common.
It's a
That's my
movement.
point, though.
Right.
Is I was just gonna say the demographic, whatever was that first. Say before Ron Paul even heard about it, the first like people that were just making that stir. There was probably, like you're saying right now, those type of Democrats in there, which was so cool
big
about
time.
it, and that's why it became what it became. Because I remember for me, it was like check dailypaul.com, go to these other places. Just forums, anything, and there was people from all persuasions that would find out a couple things about a major issue, maybe using math and economics briefly, and then they would form an opinion. They all matched up, and some were Democrats, some were Libertarians.
I just love that because math. I mean, if you use math,
Yeah, like
you agree with the Tea Party.
The simplest
kidding,
law.
right?
Like I'm
I know.
not the smartest guy with math. Like I was okay, but I had to try really hard at it. But it was like all things not sustainable will eventually end. That's a type of math. Like if you determine through any calculation using any type of math that this is whatever's happening is not sustainable, then it will end. You know. And you look at a deficit, it just gets bigger and bigger, and you're just like, wow, this economic model looks unsustainable. Like, where's it going? Is it going to end? Is something bad going to happen?
Can I just, before we move on, bring up one of the most
Yes.
objectionable portions that...
Listen to him talk like
Objectionable
before we move on,
things.
like
No,
we're
we're not
following some
moving
agenda.
on.
Like we're following some kind of structure on this.
Obamacare.
No, but
There's no structure whatsoever. But when it comes to Obamacare, I mean, there's lots of reasons to oppose it. I think that constitutionality is the most strong, and that comes with the mandate of purchasing a good or a service from the government. And people don't realize that this has been tried and tried throughout human history, especially in the British experience. King John I, the one who signed the Magna Carta in the 13th century, initiated a mandate for the citizenry to buy scutage. And this was, scutage was a form of payment to the government to avoid military conscription. And this was forced among the populace and was so controversial that it was one of the contributing factors to which that he had to sign the Magna Carta, or Great Charter. Charles I did the same thing in the 17th century. And the biggest part I want to talk about is the Boston Tea Party of 1773 was a reaction to the Tea Act of 1773. And that was done because the British decided that a company that was failing, then known as the British East India Tea Company, was
Check
failing.
out their flag, by the way.
Yeah.
Wonder where the U.S. got their flag.
But anyways, this corporation was failing and going under and becoming bankrupt, and because it was able to concoct efforts to persuade the Parliament, they allowed a monopoly where the British East India Tea Company had sole monopoly over selling the colonists tea. And that is the reason that the colonies, in particular Boston, opposed it. It was because they were forced to buy products from that company. It wasn't the tax. The Tea Act actually lessened the tax on the tea. So Americans have been rejecting individual mandates since they dumped tea in the Boston Harbor in 1773.
Heck
I
yeah.
love that. It's so
that's
eloquent.
a great. Yeah, that's super eloquent. That was this eloquent. Like you started it off. You had the introduction. You had
Sorry
the
to be
climax.
long-winded. I'm just
The
passionate.
denouement and the final statement were amongst the same thing, but it was perfect. It was just like, that's it. That was sweet. If you could, dude, you should get paid to do that type of stuff. Like,
I wish I could.
well,
I would have a different day job.
I guess we'll find a way.
we'll all,
right?
yeah, we all kind of, yeah.
I just look at the
We'll figure
economics of these programs. Like, you know, I posed this question to a couple of Democrats. What was that, last week? We crashed one of they call them information sessions for Minshore, which is the Obamacare exchange in the state of Minnesota. And like the lady literally said, this program is going to be a net cost saver, and we're going to expand insurance to cover people with pre-existing conditions. I go, that is the craziest thing I've ever heard. That doesn't make sense. You're telling me now you increase the pool of insured people, those with actually guaranteed risks, and costs are coming down? That's not the way math works. It's like saying, like, your car insurance, now expands to the person you know is going to drink 20 beers and then get behind the wheel.
Yep.
Right? And he's going to get in an accident. Or the guy that's already been in an accident, now you're going to cover that guy. That's not going to bring down the cost of your car insurance. It's insanity.
Yeah, you seriously, it's pulling top tiers of people who manage themselves in a certain way down to lower rungs.
Right.
And it's just like in class, you don't take the smartest people and hold them back. Well, you do if you're public school half the time, but
Yeah.
you know, like, I mean, sure, there's a lot of like brilliant teachers in the public school system.
So
a lot
that's
of
how you
great
make the education system.
But you know, but it's just, I don't know, man. It's
Wow.
yeah, I don't know.
Visceral here.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, it's prison in a way. I mean, some kids, they learn the ways of the system, and they just, you know, they learn how to cheat, they learn how to get by, whatever, you know. I mean, I would suck on so many tests that I probably should have got D's and C's a few times, and I'd get A's and B's. I had, like, really good GPA, but I'd just, like, actually be interested in maybe, like, half of what the teacher's saying. Maybe the class was super boring. But then I just talk to the teacher before class, after class. So I was talking to him, like, trying to do extra stuff for him, stuff like that. Oh my! Even in college it was nuts. In college, I think they just sit there, and they must just smoke a big joint or something, and just say, "Oh yeah, he was all right. Oh yeah." Like, dude, I went to St. Cloud State, and some of those teachers were so strict. Like, this math teacher, it was calculus like 1, and I got like A in high school and stuff, and I retook it because I was gonna be a meteorologist major. And,
Are you kidding me? That's what you're...
Dead serious. And so I went there, and so like, I got a D, and I never had a D, I don't think, in my life. And it was my first time in college, and I got a D in this class, and it was like retake. I just thought I'd retake it if I had to take like 3 calcs. I'm not starting at 2 in college. I'm just going to do them all. Nope, got a D, and then I switched majors to like a communication studies.
I think that's
ES.
hilarious. I could just see you as the meteorologist, like, yo, check it out. This is Team Mage. Here's your weather, yo.
Hail in the air.
It's so funny. I mean, well, it's only like a super small percentage of meteorologists do that. That's why I switched. It wasn't because I couldn't pass calc. I mean, eventually I would have passed it if it's what I wanted to do.
Uh-huh. I
I would have passed it the first time, maybe the second, for sure. But the thing is they show you like all the graduates and where they go, and it was like 82% are working for the National Weather Service in a hut somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, there's just these computer just data collecting jobs, stuff like that, and I'm like, oh my God, is that what I want to do every day? And I'm like, no.
Well,
Kudos to the people that do. So I definitely would have been on like the local access TV, making like up to $12,000 a year, just doing like the local weather.
Straight up.
I don't know.
jeez. You said you got some questions from like some of your fans.
Yeah.
What do they want?
Well, one of them was asking about consumer price index, and I've heard like Peter Schiff and people make this argument all the time that the CPI, the way they judge it, first of all, they've changed a bunch of times to benefit the state, and I can't back that up with facts. I don't know, but that's what I've heard. And I've also heard that the CPI, you can track it on like independent websites all the time, and people use a different basket of consumer goods to say like the CPI, really inflation's very high, but the government's lying because they don't want the CPI to really show that inflation's high, and the prices of everything that you actually use, the average person uses, are really going up a lot faster than you're ever being told. I don't know if you guys have anything to say about that, if that sounds like dead on, or if
aren't they compared to the dollar? Isn't that one of the biggest objections, that the CPI is based off the dollar, which is inflating at a rapid pace and has been since the advent of the Federal Reserve, right?
Right.
Yes.
I mean, the way I look at it is well, first of all, the definition of inflation is the increase in the monetary supply. It's not really prices. Prices going up is just
effect.
It's an effect or a symptom of inflation, and we know that inflation is occurring because we can see in the Fed actually reports this data on a daily basis. You know, M2 and monetary base. It gives you a bunch of their different indicators of the money supply.
What do we get?
So,
you want a ballast point? What do you want? I'm getting a ballast point.
Tiger, sorry.
I'm boring these guys so much that they're
Heck
going
no,
for another
No,
beer.
keep going.
No,
I wasn't gonna talk.
It's like a clock. Whenever. Oh, you got tigers left. They're all gone. You got a tiger.
I'm listening.
So
What do you want?
it's so like we know that the monetary base is increasing. You can track that.
The M2, right?
Well, M2 monetary base, all these things are increasing.
What's the difference? You don't have. I don't
Well,
know.
M2 is like it's more the deposits that are in bank accounts at the federal, or I'm sorry, in your bank system. Whereas the monetary base is the cash in the system. There are a couple different parts of the monetary base in M2, but M2 is a much larger statistic. Like monetary base, I think right now is, oh god, I think it's like 3.6 trillion. I should know it off the top of my head.
Okay.
And the M2 is over 10 trillion. And those keep increasing.
Oh,
a
M2
substantial
includes derivatives and stuff, or no?
No, M2 would not include that. It'd be like your money market accounts and certificates of deposit would be part of M2. Whereas the monetary base is your, like all the cash, the printed money that's in the system.
Yeah.
In short-term deposits. I wish I had that in front of me. Anyhow, so we know that's increasing. So that's inflation. So we know inflation exists. But this person's question is, are they misstating it? Well, they're misstating it because CPI, which is reported by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, does not include fuel and energy. I'm sorry, food and energy. Okay. But even if you look at energy, right now, there has been a decrease in energy costs in the United States in the last year. Now, part of that reason is we're slowly becoming a net exporter of energy. I mean, we will probably be a net exporter of energy. Estimates range from 5 to 20 years. But we will be because of what's going on in the Bakken Shale region in North Dakota and what's happening down in Oklahoma.
We're an
and Texas.
exporter of sexual energy.
In this room,
Always
for
goes
sure.
that way with Mage.
It's
Well, the
your
US?
podcast.
Well, we are natural
LA.
gas, but like
half the world's sexual energy comes right out of Los Angeles.
And Teenage Studios.
we will probably be a net exporter of sweet crude oil eventually at some point because of what's going on.
My
Should
favorite
be.
crude oil.
That's your favorite. It's over sour, the sulfur base.
We're sitting on reserves that are untapped, right?
But
Even off the
I was just
Right.
up in the oil fields, right, a couple weeks ago.
Wait, in North Dakota?
Before I went elk
Oh, yeah.
hunting, right?
Nice.
And, yeah, I go up there at least once a year. And it's first of all, it's nuts. Don't go there, ever. But second of all, like the dudes up there, now granted, it's a certain demographic, but a lot of people are talking. They said basically, even in Appalachia, not the Rockies, but anywhere that's got any like carbon-based deposits, right? Not heavy minerals that are mined and stuff, which exist all over the Rockies. But they said even in parts of Appalachia, there's oil. And with like the fracking technology now, it's very predictable that everyone thinks that once that breakthrough came, that they're going to find oil really soon everywhere. That's what people think.
It's not though. It's got to be the shale rock. That's what they're getting into.
Yep.
And so
but
I don't know.
The Bakken goes from North Dakota and South
huge.
Dakota all the way up towards Alaska.
Yeah. No, I don't think it goes to Alaska. No, it doesn't go to Alaska.
All the way to Saskatchewan. No.
Bakken goes into Canada and Montana.
Saskatchewan? Yeah.
It's a big area.
I meant towards Alaska.
None of it and
what's
everything.
that?
The province is Yukon and none of it, perhaps.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, and the part of what's interesting about that is they're doing fracking in the Appalachian region, like Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
In New York. Excuse me, I'm getting beer burps here.
Oh, it's all good. It's part of the manly experience we got going on.
But those governments are so like run by liberals, whereas North Dakota, it's a different experiment as far as government's concerned.
Yeah.
And also that it's all private property that they're like farmers. So they're contracting with these oil companies. So they have rights, whereas in other areas where they're trying to do this fracking or other oil exploration, they're talking about public land. And the governments are all against it.
I'm so glad you said that because you could have not described that more clearly and more perfectly.
Well, that's why North Dakota is such a boom.
Because Montana, the people that I do business with in the oil fields up there, in Montana, 3 years ago when I started doing business with some people up there, they were talking about, oh, dude, right away, we're going to be in Montana soon because there's all this, they're mapping it all, they know where there's wells to be drilled, all this stuff. And it's slower than anyone thought. Montana is super slow at doing it, and it's pretty much justified what I've heard, the exact same reasons that you're talking about. But you got to also throw in...
By the way, that's where I invest in my practice. I invest heavily in North Dakota.
Oh.
Heavily.
Yeah,
and the company's doing business there. And the freight that's coming
in
and out.
Could be not... I mean, it depends. There's still so much going on. It just depends.
Well, they could sustain 20 plus years right now at their current rate.
Yeah, but you got to recognize that fact... You can talk to 80 smart people in a day, and that number is so dynamic.
I know, but I'm using the lowball figures of those experts. Like some experts.
Yeah, but it depends on how many barrels a day. You could be talking. We're going to get 1/8 of this for 100 years.
Well, no, they're talking about 800,000 barrels a day right now.
I'm optimistic, but I'm just saying, I just been going through this for about 4 years now, and I'm just saying 3 years ago it was just we're it's going to look like this here, there, and the other place, and then it didn't. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, but
interest. All I'm noting is, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying it's so interesting that people are we're gonna have all this stuff going on, and then sometimes it just, even in North Dakota, it just a year ago, people were getting scared.
Yeah.
Why do you guys think the government has been so predisposed to suppressing nuclear energy? I'm just curious.
I'm not
Since
a fan
the 70s.
of nuclear energy at all.
It's a bunch. Well, in my opinion, it's a bunch of environmentalists that don't understand it.
Hold on.
Because
I want you to
the most
on.
environmentally sound type of power.
I gotta finish this.
No, it's not.
Well, I gotta finish this fan's question here about CPI before we get to the next topic.
All right, here.
So my point,
right there, that notepad, you gotta write nuclear energy.
I'll remember it.
You got a pen? You need.
I just can't. I'll write it right here.
The point.
We're gonna get to
the point. The person's asking. So the CPI does not include food and fuel. Okay, but fuel is actually coming down in the last year, and the point we were making is that with what's going on in the Bakken region in Oklahoma and Texas, we were actually producing more oil, and it's being refined in the United States, and it's actually bringing costs down. Food is going up, but the point is, it's not just the prices and the overall economy that's going up that is bad for us. It's the fact that they're not coming down, because naturally in a free market system, prices should come down over time, and we all know this because, a computer today costs less than a computer yesterday, and the technology is better today.
Boob jobs and LASIK,
right? So
the
prices
that the market dictated in the health industry, and they went from dangerous, rare, and fashion, all that. Now they're cheap in strip malls. Everyone can get either one of them.
Right, and prices should be coming down even faster. But
even on flashlights, they should.
Yeah, on flashlights, your new sponsor, right?
Oh, I said flashlights the whole time.
What I thought you said flash.
I don't even know what a flashlight is.
Well, you gotta listen to Joe Rogan.
Dude, I know.
The other thing, though, is that that interest rates are ridiculously low. So if you're buying a home for 30 years, you're loving it. If you're, buying your fourth ATV on credit, you're loving it. But if you're older and your life savings is in CDs and bonds, you're not keeping up with anything. I mean, it's a horrible deal for you. You're getting screwed by the Federal Reserve's policies.
Unless you invested in Barry bonds.
I don't know. He's got that big asterisk behind his name. So I guess to answer the viewer's question, they're misstating it. I don't think it's far worse right now. What I would say is get ready. It's going to be far worse because if we see anything by the Fed, they're not going to stop quantitative easing. And when you print more money and that has velocity, it picks up. The economic activity picks up. That's when we have a real problem. And I would say the biggest issue is once China and Russia and all these international players say, you know what, the American dollar is no longer what we want to use as our reserves and trade. They're going to come back to America and start buying stuff, and you're going to have that influx of all that cash that comes back to America, and you'll see, I would say, rampant price inflation that ensues.
I have some buddies that are some other smart buddies, and some of them I feel like try to always put time frames on when certain like runaway events are going to happen and stuff like that. And if there's anything I've learned, it's that you really can't do that, but you have to find the best fundamentals in what structure how to view the world, and then the time frame be damned, because sometimes things go from like 0 to 60 in a year or something,
Right.
4 big wars or anything like that. So do you believe that currency problems can actually be one of the most important factors in starting wars?
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
What about
the question is, what does China
what about
do?
Libya with their gold currency for Africa? You know about that?
No.
Like the main reason, the most evidence I've seen on why the United States, like the Hillary Clinton quote when she got rid of Gaddafi, we came, we saw, he died, as to say basically I'm Alexander the Great, but I just put my own spin on it.
Right.
Because that's right, that was Alexander the Great, wasn't it?
Sounds like something.
I came, I saw, I conquered.
I don't think that would be directly attributable.
Yeah, it's a total rip. It's a Carlos Mencia of Alexander the Great. That's what she did when they killed Gaddafi.
Sure.
Because I think he said, I came, I saw, I conquered. But I totally might be stupid in that. It's not Alexander
Well,
the Great. I think
do you
it
know?
was.
I don't know.
I think that's Alexander the Great. I came, I saw, I conquered. And Hillary Clinton goes, we came, we saw, he died. And she goes, ha ha ha, and does her like Wicked Witch of the West laugh.
Can you believe people
It's so
actually want her as
creepy.
president?
Well, I don't want to even. I mean,
Yeah,
we
I know,
can get into
totally
that,
different
but holy
topic, right?
crap, that'd be like an hour of just garbage. But we can talk about it. But,
Well,
but I was just gonna say the
to answer
Libya thing was he was right, real close. First of all, we didn't know until after we kicked him out or killed him and took over the shit that they took under the, I think it was TARP or it was some bailouts where their central bank got billions of dollars, and it was that secret Bernanke money.
Yeah.
And it was like, hold on, you're printing money and handing it out in America to help the poor people, and you're sending billions to Gaddafi. And what I heard is the only thing Gaddafi did the last 5 years that was notable were 2 absolutely amazing things the last 10 years. And sure, he was an idiot, brutal idiot, whatever, forever. But this is like the last decade, and he's been for multiple decades. He was building aquifers and giving people free apartments, free college in certain age groups, and letting you farm. Like, he was building public aquifers and then just divvying off, like, if you farmed it, you could farm this land and benefit or whatever. And so all of a sudden he's got like a farming economy. He had the highest living standard in Africa above South Africa, because South Africa, half of it's super poor. So Libya was the richest country in Africa, and he was this close to starting an African gold-backed currency. You didn't hear about the gold-backed
No, I
currency?
didn't.
It's even had a name. Look this up. We'll talk about it next time.
Yeah.
Just to answer your initial question, I
Yeah,
do
go ahead.
think paper money indeed is definitely a friend of the state in conducting warfare. At least it has been historically in the United States. During our revolution, we printed the Continental, which
Yep.
was all but worthless by
Its engine
1781.
sucked.
Yeah. And at the same time, the states were emitting bills of credit backed by paper. The winning currency of the time, of course, was the Spanish bullion-backed currencies. Right. And in addition, just to elaborate on that, in the Civil War, one of the first things that the Republicans under Lincoln did in 1861 is nationalize the banks and start printing greenback fiat. And because of that, there was rampant inflation, and that was used to fund, the war machine for the Union. And, we've seen that time and time again happen throughout history, not only in the United States, but in other nations.
And it's funny, like, the founders understood with the Continental Experiment that money needed to be backed by a physical commodity. And even in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, if I'm right,
Yes.
they specify gold
Yes.
and silver is what money is. Like
For
only,
repayment of debts, yes.
and only in Article 1, Section 8, only Congress can coin money, which has now been delegated
Yep.
to the Federal Reserve.
How much do you, Dave would know, I bet the most in this room, but a lot of people say the Constitution only says that gold and silver can be money. I've never found anything that says that's true in that the way they phrase it there.
Literally, the answer to that may be yes, but Article 1, Section 10 makes it known that gold and silver must be used in repayments of debts.
Yes.
And the Articles of Confederation gave the centralized government the power to emit bills of credit. That was uniformly denied in the Constitutional Convention in
The
Philadelphia.
Articles of Confederation said the government could let bills of credit.
Yes. Could emit bills of credit,
Yeah,
and that was summarily rejected in the Philadelphia
that's
Convention,
awesome.
and replaced with prose that said, "or borrow money on behalf of the United States." So they could no longer emit bills of credit; they could only borrow money from foreign powers. That was a distinct decision made on the behalf of the in the convention.
So that was good, you would argue.
I think it's very good, and there's nothing in the Constitution that prohibits any other nation's currency.
Aren't
by the way
most
of
things,
being
though,
used.
argued for people that are like the most liberty-minded people in bunny ears, liberty-minded? Like, it's so funny. Certain people hate that term. I love the term. Liberty-minded is like the most broad way of just being like, what framework are you using right now? Oh, I'm being liberty-minded. Easy. Well, people try to classify it as this collective now, like on YouTube comments or the internet or something. People are like, oh,
everyone should be liberty-minded.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
who can have your mind captured? The state can't capture your mind. Everyone should be liberty-minded, right?
Oh my god! But I'm just saying, liberty-minded people. That's all I was gonna say was a lot of people have this position, and that I always want to buy into. It's like the Articles of Confederation. They were the bee's knees. Like that's what's up. We need to listen to the Articles of Confederation. So I like when people like you can put different perspectives or. Different perspectives, but on different issues where you're like, no, that's not always the case.
I do think there are ways to consider that the Confederation as set up by the Articles as a superior government. For instance, Article 3 of that document completely explicitly states that the states retain their freedom, sovereignty, and independence. I mean, they couldn't have had that unless they held those characteristics in the first place. That's kind of a parent of our 10th Amendment. But at the same time, there's things that allowed the government to actually run rampant that rarely get discussed. For instance, when it comes to the currency issue, a lot of people say the Articles of Confederation was, it was too unstrong of a national government, right? It was too much of a state power government. But the things that it let the state do in form of printing money was some of the most tyrannical, I think. And we can thank...
God, that's cool.
And just
I didn't
one
really
more
know
thing
that
before
stuff.
I let up on this.
Yeah.
The founding father that I think that we can most thank for his hard money views is a guy from Connecticut named Roger Sherman. Roger Sherman was a man that Thomas Jefferson said never said a foolish thing in his life. And he made it a point in Philadelphia to convince the other representatives that there needed to be prose in Article 1, Section 10 that guaranteed that silver and gold were heralded above the other currencies.
It's almost like there was a big hodgepodge of different people that were influential at the time, and none of them really, I mean, not none of them, but there was many different points of view on the subject. And in our opinion, the good and the right point of view won. And then therefore we take the characters who made that happen and we say they were great men because they saw that they had no power to do everything they wanted to do, which was take over the world and leave everyone the hell alone, right? The libertarian dream.
Yeah.
I want to take over the world and leave you alone. So, but you know what I'm saying? Like that's what's so cool about it is I learned about the biography of these people, Thomas Jefferson, whoever, to find out who they were as individuals, their flaws, their great points. But anytime it's heralded in these characters, it's more their actions. Like that's what defined them is their actions.
Sure.
The actions that you believe were good
Words
and right.
are not the best way to judge a man. It is by the
Right,
actions.
and that's why you learn like their actions, you judge them, and then you learn who they were, And then you learn some ugly things, but then you learn some things that even within the context of time when a lot of those same ugly things were going on, you know, you could see that they were transcending themselves through their life. Like, it's like watching a band that doesn't sell out after their first album. That's what a great person is. They keep putting out work. It's like a Ron Paul. The books at the end of his life are some of his best, most concise work. Sure, he's probably got some crack squad editors, but at the same time, like, he's not out there selling out, you know.
When you say that about a band, I just automatically think of Creed. For some reason, it always comes.
Yikes! He thinks Creed had a good album.
No, My Own Prison.
Oh, come on! My Own Prison was a legitimate rock album. Come on. 90.
That's Team Mage Podcast. We'll catch you next time.
I can't believe it.
Yo, Creed. Oh, terrible.
My Own Prison was great, dude.
The only thing about that
legit.
band, the bass, the drums, is kind of like crap.
Tremonti on the guitar.
I was just gonna say Tremonti on the guitar. He was throwing riffs out there and stuff. Was it a reason that I could listen to that stuff? Heck no.
Are you kidding me? My Own Prison's good.
Heck
I still
no.
listen to it to this day. I
Agree
can't
to
believe
disagree.
it. Such a hater.
Oh my god, oh my, that's hilarious. Hey, I think
Totally
it's cool
different.
though.
Totally
because
different band by the
American.
second album though. Totally different band.
Human Clay. It was a little bit of a downer.
Whatever.
My buddy and I, back in like the day, we went to a Creed concert, but you know we went to all like the heavy metal concerts. So
Yeah.
when we went to Creed in Three
So you
Doors,
moshed and got kicked out
no,
on the first
so
song.
yeah, so it was at the Alpine.
In
what's
Colorado?
Forcibly.
No, it's,
Oh, in
it's
Wisconsin?
in Wisconsin. Yeah.
Oh, I've never been there either. I want to go to both. of
Like
those
we
places.
sat down like on this grassy knoll to watch
Yeah.
this thing, so we couldn't call it a concert. We called it a recital. So we went to the Creed recital.
Oh, that's pretty funny.
But that was by their second album. But dude, I thought their first album was great.
I thought it was good.
Well, I mean, you were making fun of Dave Matthews Band,
I
and,
was.
and
No,
Dave
totally making
and
fun
Dave
of
Matthews Band. Every joke about him is funny, like whatever. But if you look at the first 10 or 20 live DVDs or any sort of live recordings they ever did after they blew up, so I'm talking about mainstream. I mean, because no one heard about them. They played for like 10 or 20 years. They're from like South Africa, and once they blew up, some of those first songs that they did and stuff. They would do all these live DVDs, and you could not watch one of those and not have a good time.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, they were writing songs. They're all different. They all have that same Dave Matthews sound that you can make fun of. Like, he's super unique. But was it Carter Buford? And like, I mean, dude, drumming, bass, everything is just top notch. And they jam, and they'd have 2-3 minute solos. Like, I don't know, they were that good that I had to respect them. Even way more than like Dream Theater, and you guys, I'm sure, love Dream Theater.
Love Dream.
But I think Dave Matthews Band better than Dream Theater.
Ugh. Well, there's
Dream Theater is all better
both bands have
musicians on a technical
big cult
level.
following, I'll say that.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So
Oh, it's interesting
fair
stuff.
enough. I love Dream Theater, but
Did you have to talk more about CPI?
No, I think I answered it for
No,
that
stop.
person.
Well,
Well, you had other questions, didn't you?
Oh,
say-
I got other questions.
What were
But
the other
CPI, dude.
You gotta
CPI,
talk to your fans. You know?
CPI, yeah, right. CPI fascinates me. That's why I was just making sure. He's my buddy Ryan that said something about asking that or talk about that, because the CPI, when you hear like Schiff talk about it, I've mentioned him 8 times already on this podcast, which is cool. I love the dude. That's pretty funny. But I love it. He can tear that stuff apart like so bad. He's like, it's like the best evidence of watching when the government changes how they're trying to measure it. It's like it's the best evidence of watching someone try to cover up all their like pile of crap.
Yeah, but I mean, don't think that like prices are crazy, like increasing right now in the economy. I mean, they are going up. Like we all go to the grocery store.
Yeah, but
we
if
go,
you double M2 in whatever it is, 14 years or whatever it was a year or two ago, I read a statistic like it was gonna M2 double in like 14 years, and it didn't double in like 7
Yeah,
years
but I mean,
before or
like,
something.
even
so
that-
hold on, but you
Okay.
have that, right? So let's say that's a factor, and then you have to add in the factor of the CPI, the real CPI increasing. Then you have to add those two together, right? Because it's proportional in dollars. So if the real CPI is, or is it disproportionate? Did I just mix it up? Then it would actually be less if the prices go up, if the monetary supply went up, right? Because there's more money.
yeah, but like,
So maybe
if
did I
your
just
bank-
prove myself
well, hold on,
an
but
alarmist?
like if your bank account goes
hyping it
up,
up too
like
much?
say your money market account goes up, but you're not spending that cash. That's not going to put the upward pressure on prices. Upward pressure on prices occurs when there's more cash in the system. I mean, it's just part of it's part of the invisible hand in the economy.
I think it could put
like when more money is chasing goods and services in the economy, there's this like invisible hand that brings the prices up.
Why couldn't it
over
put
time.
pressure on it if you
Because if
you
it's
had all
sitting
the
in
savings and then you took a loan based off that savings or something, right?
Well,
You're creating.
No, I mean that's a great point. The loaning and the fractional.
I got $1
reserve.
million,
Right.
and I got it sitting there, and I want to be. See, I have this dream about every week, so I'm bringing it up. I just want to have money someday, so I can be like, Mage finances. Like I could just be a financier. I could just roll around town on my like electric bicycle.
Buy up craft
Oh,
breweries.
I bought this brewery like 5 years ago, but it sucks. I'm selling it. Like, you want to buy it? Just that'd be sweet.
Don't you guys think that most of the problems that arise with this, though, is a symptom of artificial manipulation of the interest rates? Because
Yes.
isn't it under the Austrian theory,
Yes.
which I believe we all subscribe to, at least to an extent?
Oh, absolutely.
That because of that, there's tons of malinvestments, and over
Yes.
time, firms that may want to individuals that may want to invest in one firm would not necessarily do that depending on the conditional rate of interest at the time. And because of that, over time it pronounces companies that would not get these free market investments under normal circumstances, and then eventually comes crashing down.
And I guess that's the way I would answer your fans, question to you, is that the bigger concern is what's happening in the interest rate market. That's the biggest problem with this inflation, because it's a symptom of the inflation. They wouldn't have these low interest rates, which is actually what their target is. The Federal Reserve's target is the low
set
interest
by
rates.
the market, right? That's the alternative.
They have to manipulate the money supply, inject credit in the economy in order to buy up bonds. Because that's really what they're doing. They're buying mortgage-backed securities.
And they
buying
used to not
treasury
have
bonds.
that right under their original charter.
Oh,
is that
right,
correct?
exactly.
Is that exact part of the open market operations or whatever they call it?
Yeah,
that's part of it.
It's not only that; it's not part of the new charter. It's actually something that's completely new. I mean, this QE is very new in what we're doing.
That's what should creep people out and make them
really
interested in
should.
it, like right away. Like if you had 5 seconds and you told someone 2 sentences and you just said, the Federal Reserve is this private bank that issues all of our currency on a legal basis, and now they're engaging in these open market operations called QE, where they're just injecting massive amounts of credit into the system, and then they should be like, holy shit, really?
Well, I could show them. I could show them a graph, like the monetary.
Did I hit that? Was that correct?
Yeah, the monetary
that's what should make you go, oh shit! Like that's a big deal. Like that's going to affect everything on a massive scale at the same time.
The monetary base before the crash of the housing market. I should say that in like quotations, crash, because really it was like a 23% correction, and then the Fed came in to try to save it
too.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was like $800 billion.
He said try and save it with like a smirk and a bunny ears. So
Yeah, I mean, $800 billion. That's the monetary supply.
Just entertain it for a short segment.
This is a
of time.
premise.
Yes.
Yeah.
800. It's like 800 to $1 trillion. I mean, the $800 billion to $1 trillion is like the monetary supply before 2008. And I quoted before. I'm just off the top of my head. You can look it up on your computer. I think it's like $3.6 trillion. The monetary base is today. So we're talking about like quadruple in the matter of 6 years. That's how much money has been created out of thin air, basically, in our economy.
And I mean, you brought up a good point earlier, is that only Congress...
3.3.
3.3. I'm sorry, $3.3 trillion. So it's like quadrupled in that time. But have we seen prices in the economy quadruple? No, we haven't.
You know what I always...
And that's the question this guy has is, I mean, is our prices being misstated? Yeah, they are, but it's not like it's crazy. But what has been an effect of this monetary inflation? When you go to the bank, I mean, I was just looking at my health savings account. That's the way I buy health insurance, the right way. And I'm like, okay, which bank am I going to park my health savings account at? And I chose Chase Bank, right? Chase Manhattan. And why did I choose them? Because their account, they were offering 40 basis points, 0.4%. That's ridiculous. 0.4% one. Yeah, that's the cashback. Like all the other ones.
France.
Yeah, all the other ones are like 20 basis
It's like
points.
a negative 0.1 in France or something.
I know,
for borrowing
it's
Fed
insanity.
funds. Yeah.
I mean, look at the like you put your money away in a CD for a year. Like think about your grandma and grandpa that are buying CDs and they're getting 76 basis points like 0.76. They're not even getting 1% back. So they put away $1,000 a year, and they're not even getting $10 back. They're getting $7.60 back for stashing away $1,000. I mean, that is the real.
That's almost like the market in that system is just a leech on the whale, which is the government policy of how this all works out,
right?
Based on the monetary policy of the government. And so you're like, oh yeah, the market on CDs or life insurance policy or something, and then you're like, yeah, like you are observing a market, and there's competition between agents and policies and programs and products and whatever you want to call them. But really, that's just that that's that fish on the great white shark that just sucks its skin all day, so the great white shark lets it fucking sit there. That's all the industry is in the financial industry.
Just one thing that we alluded to before that I believe deserves a little bit of an elaboration is that you mentioned that it is in Article 1, Section 8 that only Congress has the power to coin
yeah,
money, right?
There's a lot on that.
And because of the advent of the Federal Reserve and the 16th Amendment, which allowed the federal government to institute an income tax, it has created these new government agencies that have become non-responsive to the people. The founders realized that it would be a good thing to have your representatives beholden to you and your views, where you could influence their decisions, and by doing so, suppress rampant government overreach.
It's really interesting.
Absolutely.
This audit the Fed bill, like, I posed this question to Representative Betty McCollum. Sadly, she's my congresswoman in Congressional District 4 in Minnesota. Well. And I posed this question to her at the state fair in a debate, and I said, why did you oppose the audit of the Fed? And her response to me was she didn't understand what the audit the Fed was. She thought it was just looking at their books. Audit the Fed
Hold on. She was... what year was this, did you think? Or what'd you say?
This was last year, 2012.
Oh my God, dude. And she had no idea what audit the Fed was.
Well, what she thought, and usually when you hear audit, you think it's purely financial, so looking at the books, you got an accountant.
Yeah.
Well, part of that is actually done with the Federal Reserve, but audit the Fed is really about learning the decisions of the FOMC. Most people don't know this. The FOMC, the Federal Open Markets Committee, which meets... I think it's like 6 times a year or something like that with the Federal Reserve. They actually don't release the minutes of that meeting until 6 weeks after the fact. And they say... You
know what? I knew that it was... I heard that it was quite a while before, and that was a problem. Like, people were freaking out about it.
Yeah, I mean,
why is it like that? Why is it designed like that?
You know, their logic is that the decisions are so critical to the economy, they don't want to see the market crash.
It's the ultimate, like, mafioso answer to why you can't be accountable. You're a representative of people. Well, in the mafia, you're a representative of, like, a private interest. Well, in the government, you're supposed to abide by a charter. And what do they call it in Canada? Some charter. See, now we sound like typical Americans. We're both like, I don't know. But it's their constitution, but it's something charter. And they all say the same thing, and they're getting arrested. Like, this is against this whatever charter, right? I'm just saying, like, the Constitution represents what? Common law, but it's a charter nonetheless. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I'm saying, like, when people need to abide by the charter... I don't know. Go ahead. I cut you off, and now I'm talking about the Constitution as a...
Well, I just think it's crazy. I mean, like, most people, they knew that the FOMC's minutes are withheld from the public for 6 weeks.
That's all I was saying. Like, it's just a blatant, like, creepy situation when you're trying to... These people should abide by the Constitution. Like, even though they don't fit in it, so I guess there's the answer, too.
The most important
they don't even fit in it.
The most important price in the economy...
Everyone already hates you. Now do what you do.
The most important price in the economy to me is interest rates. It's a price that, savers are willing to lend their money to borrowers, right?
Yeah.
It's one of the most important prices in the economy. And the decision makers of where the banks, because that's really what the interest rates they control, but they kind of indirectly control other interest rates through their open market operations. So the organization that controls, like, the prices, and we're all opposed to price controls in almost every industry except for this one, but that body of it's not government, it's a private industry, but they're not even accountable to the people. They don't have to release their minutes for 6 weeks. I mean, it's crazy. It is absolutely insane. And if people understood this problem, I think we would see pitchforks and torches at the Federal Reserve banks and all the all the cities that they have their banks at. But
Yeah, I've been to a few of those protests of the Minneapolis Fed and whatnot, and I don't know. I mean, it's awesome, but at the same time, like every major protest, in your brain, you're like, it's kind of a minor protest based on everyone else who's playing an active part in this economy and community and locale. You know.
Oh, they
this
prey.
is just
They
like
definitely prey on the ignorance of the mass public. And that's the
I mean,
problem. It's not like I hate my fellow man.
It's the way we got to live in the world, though.
Yeah.
I mean, that's our world. Like, we didn't choose that.
Right.
And without sounding elitist, and I don't think I'm going to come across as too elitist, but, you know, I mean, I would consider there's this demographic of people that, you know, these bunny ears that care about stuff. And let's even include, like, the Communist Party and the social, but there's, like, this bunny ears people that actually care about stuff. And that's, like, bigger than any demographic that we would identify with. That's like multiply that by 10, and then let's say that's the group that people who care. That's still like just nothing.
When you say that
of the whole collective, like every group, 75% will think are on some tip that we don't agree with. Put them together, that's still nothing. So it's like that's what's so crazy is that's why you need to have a philosophy you believe in, because it's going to be it has to be who you are and what you believe in. If you're part of a collective, that shit wears off, man. You're part of some culty, groupy, movementy, collectivy, disgusting thing, and that's what's so tough about any group. That's like the whole Tea Party story within itself too. Is you start with this like philosophical belief that can't help but unite you, and with everyone else, and then all of a sudden you're in a group and you go, I'm in a fucking group. I didn't sign up for this group. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, does that how it feels? Like, I'm sure you could.
Well, I
agree
believe in
with
free
that
association, but
yeah. Well, that's the whole point. That's the answer to all that.
yeah.
I just feel like sometimes that's just what you end up feeling, and I feel like the founders probably felt that a lot too. I feel like the Civil War, the Whig Party ending, was a whole microcosm, or it's not a microcosm. It's a whole example in itself of that type of thing, where a group any organization. I studied communication. I didn't learn much, but in business organization or anything, they said once a group is like a cohesive group, it basically wants nothing more than its own self-sustainability. It doesn't matter if it's political or a church or anything. Once it hits a certain point, like it's gonna only want to just not die.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Then you watch political parties with like the freaking GOP right now. And in my opinion, the GOP right now looks like someone that is swimming across the Irish Sea and they didn't realize they couldn't make it. That's what the GOP looks like, man. They're like just struggling. They're on a little dinghy. It's Cuba to Florida, and half people are jumping off and getting eaten by sharks.
There's such a divergent array of beliefs and philosophies in the GOP right now. And I think it's most pronounced by seeing what members of the GOP say about each other, like John McCain calling the likes of Cruz and Rand Paul as wacko birds, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you see this infighting, and it's a microcosm of discussion that's happening all over. I mean, there's a lot of people in my political persuasion, and I usually call myself a Jeffersonian or a libertarian.
Yes, that's a great term. That's how I start.
Is disturbed because a lot of the GOP is essentially a DFL member with an R next to their name.
Yep.
In my estimation, I mean,
when you look at the political climate, there's a two-party system in America. I don't want to get into the reasons for it, but balloting and all that kind of stuff, and signatures that need to be collected, and just the way the framework's set up in the various states, it leads to a two-party system in many respects. And the Republican Party at least is open up to the ideas of liberty, and that's why a lot of us still choose to
That's
use
how I
the
view it,
Republican
too.
Party. Right. Like Ron Paul won Minnesota. Overwhelmingly. At the end, at the state convention, they had overwhelmingly won the majority of the delegates to the national convention.
Yeah, that's something
They
that we
gave it
should.
up to Bachman.
People just that. Why is that lost in the sands of time, more or less? Where, what an amazing thing that was to be a member of the state and watch that, and the number of delegates. And granted, in a way, at the end of the day, did it mean anything? No, but that's at the end of the day what like the big media outlets or something that want to basically treat it like the Super Bowl or something like that, and the champion, like no matter what, that's a champ. The Patriots, they spied on your practice all season. That's a champ. Like what? It doesn't matter. You know, I mean, like yeah, they're the champs, but at the same time, you have to recognize great feats, and I think that is like a great example of the mindset that a lot of people have in Minnesota.
Well, they had an amazing crew: Marianne Stebbins and Cheryl Ward and Matt Collins and Matt Pagano. I'm probably forgetting some people, but
Jesse Ventura.
No, not at all.
Just kidding, y'all.
No, I mean these were
joke.
these were the guys that were part of the campaign structure in the state. I mean, they were rock stars. They had a great idea. But what really made Ron Paul successful in Minnesota, and actually nationwide, is he actually said the truth. And it was so interesting to hear a guy speak the truth. It was what really won me over with Ron Paul. And in most economics, I just loved hearing someone speak the truth.
Like a cannonball to the head, man.
Right.
Like, I don't know if there was a moment when I was woken up to certain things or whatever, but Ron Paul, I was going through like Howard Lake, Minnesota or something, right? I swear to God. It was like 07. It had to be 06, 07. Somewhere around there. But I got a pamphlet in a gas station about Ron Paul, and I read all his views and everything, and I'm like, this guy's fucking nuts. And I threw it away. And like a couple months later, my buddy was like, I'm a Ron Paul guy. And I'm like, what? And then he said like one sentence. He's like, yeah, because this guy believes that. And I'm like, really? Oh. And then immediately, all it took was one person that I respected enough. And I was like, oh, okay. And then as soon as I started, I think getting, I don't know what it was exactly, if it was actual video or something, but it was real quick. Like it was so quick that it made me realize that a lot of opinions I had probably formed for the entire beginning portion of my life up until that point were based on like really horrible foundations and not a lot of like knowledge that I built up. It was more just, oh, this seems cool, or like I'll buy into the conclusion without understanding the correct ways to reach that conclusion.
I mean, like the attraction around Paul had nothing to do with like some very small frame 76-year-old dude that can't even wear a suit that fits him. It had nothing to do with that. I mean, Ron Paul as a guy held nothing to Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney was a far more attractive guy. I'll openly admit it. But when a guy speaks the truth, that resonates with people, and people could see it.
Yeah.
And that's why he touched so many people's hearts and activated a grassroots effort like what happened in Minnesota that won the GOP. And you still see that to this day. But I, as a Tea Party activist, I try to open that tent to not just, the traditional Tea Partiers and the social conservatives, but also the Ron Paul people. And those that actually are trying to leave the GOP and going to the Libertarian Party or going to the Constitution Party. I want that big tent because I think we're a force that all believes in those three principles: free markets, fiscal responsibility, constitutional limit government. They listen to what I say about the Federal Reserve manipulating interest rates. They listen to Benner talk about the Constitution, the founder's intent, and they agree with that. And I think that's a big group of people.
Can I share my favorite Ron Paul Constitution story?
Yes.
Just real quick. All right.
No, please do.
One of my favorite things that I've ever seen unfold in government was, I believe in the late 2000s, Ron Paul on the House floor proposed using letters of marque and reprisal to go into enemy territory, condemn its inhabitants, and potentially achieve a goal. And this was something that is in the Constitution. The Constitution allows this to happen, and what it would be is that the Congress decides to sign off on achieving a short-term goal like that without going to war with a power, right? Our founding fathers had the incredible future sight to realize there might come a time where we're going to be opposing an adversary without needing to go to war with them, right? And when he brought this up on the House floor, everyone thought he was crazy. They didn't know what the heck he was talking about. But this is a constitutionally sound theory, and I always just thought it was funny because it really showed you how out of touch Washington politicians are with the Constitution.
So I remember hearing that argument, and what do? I go to my iPhone app and look up what marks and reprisal are. Yeah. Article 1, Section 8, right?
Yes, it's among the enumerated powers of Congress, yes.
So that's what I do. How many congressmen and congresswomen actually did the same thing? They probably did.
Right.
They just
and
thought it was
like,
crazy.
It's like hearing a word you don't. It's like hearing a word you don't know, and then you have your iPhone, and then you just turn on a fucking Miley Cyrus song, dictionary.com it, and you just go through the rest of your life. Like there's people. I bet 3 out of 4 people I know hear words they don't know and they don't look them up.
Right.
When I was a little kid, both my grandma, shouts out grandma and ma, like, if you didn't know something, they're like the dictionaries and that counter. Like, that's, you know what I mean? Like, they're like, if you don't know that
it's
word.
on your iPhone now.
But this was used.
But
in
no,
the
it's
war-
the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the whole moral was back then. It was more or less you obey people that are wiser than you, right? Because that's how I grew up. It was pretty strict. But now it's more or less it's the same thing. They just said it in a different way. It's what type of person are you? Are you trying to figure this stuff out? Here's your chance, or do you not care? Would you just rather have this framework in life where you might keep the same framework, or are you trying to constantly widen that lens that you have, that perspective? You trying to use the tools that you have to widen it. And it's like looking words up is about as easy as it gets. I mean, some people travel the world looking for answers. Some people write books.
This is very poetic.
Oh, thanks, man. But you know, Dave's over there writing his own books and stuff. We can talk about that too. But man, I don't know. Some people, that's like, I'm just trying to describe the way I see the differences in people. Like, I see like a lot of good people, but they're, and I don't want to call them simple because that means stupid, but you know, like, I'm not trying to sound better than anyone, but I know of people that are smart and dumb, that they have a certain framework, and you can see they have no interest in actively trying to broaden the way they view everything in the world. And then I see people, I would consider us and hundreds of other people I know that are almost addicted to broadening the way that they view things in the world through information. And
See, I'm like in the state of mind right now that I almost admire those people because...
dude,
You know, because they
I
probably
wouldn't lose
sleep better.
sleep.
Because they probably sleep better at night. Like, classic case. My brother-in-law, great guy, right? And he's just like me. He's an avid outdoorsman, and you know, I always talk about, you know, voting and stuff like that. It's like, I'm not gonna vote because, and I go, why aren't you gonna vote? And he's like, because they're all crooks.
Right.
And you know, it's like my political career is based off of proving his one statement wrong, and yet I have not been able to succeed in that yet. But it's like the dude gets up 4:30 every day, goes to the gym, works out. He's got a wonderful wife, wonderful kids, and he gets out. And he's got his 9-to-5 job, and he hunts every weekend, and he fishes every weekend. He's got a great quality life, and he sleeps much better at night. Because he tunes this shit out.
I see better.
And here
at
it's
night.
me, because I'm up at midnight saying, oh God, the Federal Reserve is continuing on to keep the interest rates low, and we got another $800 billion deficit. And I toss and turn at night because I'm thinking of these world problems. It's like, dude, I love the same things my brother-in-law loves. Why don't I just tune this shit out and go out? But you know, in the end of the day, the reason I can't do that is because I don't want someone else screwing me over. So I either do that or I move up to Alaska and live in my own homestead, and they can't mess with me.
I know. I think that we all enjoy both sides of that argument because I feel everything you said, dude, I just mirror completely. But at the same time, sometimes I'm like, you know what? But you know, if I leave and I'm ignorant for a while and all that stuff, more power to me. Like you said.
Right.
You know, but then at the same time, I'm like, well, like say some stuff gets real police statey in this country, and I'm going to Chile, or I'm going to Singapore or something. And then you go, Singapore, they cane you if you spit gum. But then what I heard is if you start a company there, you just basically start a company.
Right.
You know, I don't know. That might be a lot of red tape I don't know about.
No, academically, they're
Very free.
That's what I'm saying. Chile, Hong Kong.
It's one of the four
Chile,
Asian tigers, I think they say.
one of the greatest.
Yeah. Singapore, Hong Kong, Bangkok,
Malaysia?
Chile, Malaysia. Well, Singapore is in Malaysia, right?
No, Singapore is its
Own country, but is it
autonomous-
attached to Malaysia?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
geographically,
But
indeed.
but either way, yeah. But I guess my point was like, what do you do? I mean,
We're close.
you got the Alex Jones radio personality. He's like, this is the last stronghold. I want to leave, but there's nowhere to go. Like, I gotta fight, and I go, shit, Alex Jones, that's 100% legit. And that if that's your mindset, like, yeah, that's a great point. And there's so much evidence that's
Kokesh mindset there.
yeah. I mean, I know we'll talk about him in a second, but like, you know, I know him, Adam Kokesh. I consider him a good dude. But you know, at the same time, he's expressed to me probably no different than he's said publicly, but on a personal level, and he's just like, there's countries where it's more free, and I think he's traveled. I don't think this is a big secret. I think he's went to Costa Rica before and stuff like that. So that he may be an influence in my life. Like we talked about going to Iran before. Actually, I was gonna go with him. We were talking about it one time, and then I went, and he couldn't make it. And then I went this April. But he was like Costa Rica, Chile, like he's naming places or whatever that are supposedly more free. And do you know what Galt's Gulch is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We're big
shouts
Ayn Rand
out
fans.
to Tatiana Moroz, Luke Rudowski, because they're all there right now.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking about maybe going to Chile on a vacation in the near future.
Well,
next year or two.
you know about the Free State Project too, right? In New Hampshire.
Yes,
Yeah.
but this Galt's Gulch thing, here's what I wanted to bring up.
We're a big Ayn Rand fans, by the way, so we totally respect
On the
all
edge of
aspects
there,
Galt's
I haven't even
Gulch.
read it, but it's right behind you is capitalism.
Oh, yeah.
On the edge of the
I
desk.
swear in my
the
life and my
books.
love of it, I will never work for the sake of another man, nor ask another man to work for me.
Oh my god, this is great. This is so great, man. This is sweet. But I'm just saying, they're down there in Chile because they have that, you buy a property. Like, here's the thing. You know what Clinton's, all the conspiracies about the people they killed, Hillary Clinton, and they had, was it Whitewater? Was that what it was called?
Yep.
And
Yeah,
it was that
Whitewater.
development or something?
Yep.
And there was like they signed. No, I'm gonna start getting into where like people will hate me, whether it's Hillary Clinton or people if I factually am incorrect. But you may correct me. You may know what I'm talking about. But they had some investment thing they were involved in controlling, and there was something in the contract that if you like didn't make 1 month's payment, that you forfeited it to like them.
Huh.
Do you know about that?
I really can't remember. I mean, we're talking about like mid '90s that came out.
Dude, it's nuts. I've seen so much stuff on that.
Yeah, I
but it's,
remember it
but
was
it's
crazy,
videos,
though.
so that's why I have
Yeah.
to say this with this concern. Like, hey, I'm not saying I studied it. Like, yo, I may never know the truth. We may all never know the truth. But like, I have seen many things about that where there was something in the contract where people were like trying to sue them, and then they were basically like, if you sue us, we'll kill you, and then people ended up dead. And because people like basically paid all this money into like scams. Well, I'm looking at this Chile thing, and dude, I just shouted out people I think are awesome people, and now I'm just kind of beating around the bush, and now like if they listen, they'll be like, oh, he's talking shit. I'm not. I'm just trying to like weigh. I'm just saying there's all these other things around the world where they're as crazy as Jonestown, where you're taking people down and then like you end up killing them all.
Jim Jones,
And then you got-
Kool-Aid experience.
Yo.
Right?
Yeah, and then you got other things where it's just developments. And then you got like the mafioso Clinton style developments where they're screwing people. But that's why it's so cool, like this Chile thing, like it seems so perfect where I just am like in the mindset like, I just want to go. That's it. I just want to I got a laptop right here. I got enough money. I can sell all my belongings. I could buy beer for 50 years down in Chile and hang out and drink beer and talk about freedom and
I
write
think
books.
Chile, I mean...
You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm
Yeah.
talking
No, I
about.
don't.
Claro que
Because
sí, tío. I want to go there. Like,
I think they've privatized their social security system, their counterpart
That's
to that,
sweet.
obviously. And I think they may have instituted a flat tax of some type. Don't quote me on that, but
What I
they
heard-
have been moving into stages of liberty.
is all those problems, those brutal, like, sort of like what New World colonial problems of the last 70s, 80s in South America. They had brutal dictatorships.
Salvador
wars.
Allende and Pinochet.
Yeah, and what I heard is like in the last, let's say, decade, here I go again generalizing, but like the Argentina side became more big government and the Chile side became more like, freedom based, let's say. And I know there's probably a lot of things there that we would consider more socialist. I don't know. I don't really care. What I've heard is that if you're an American and you go down there, or anyone, let's say, and you start a business today, and you register and now you're a business, tomorrow you apply and you get your residency. Mm-hmm. Which in a country like this that we take for granted, yet don't take for granted because we care about it, that's one thing that kind of never hits home because we don't think about that stuff. Whereas a lot of people, like the stuff they have to go through to get residency here, unless you have some uber sick connection. Whereas we can go to like Chile and just start a bakery, and once we bake like a baguette, we just sign the form tomorrow and it's like, welcome.
We look at the Russian Federation, right? And there's plenty of problems that go on in that centralized authority, but they instituted a flat tax a few years ago. And they've been reaping the economic benefits.
like part of my issue with this whole thing
No, it's all
though
good.
is that, I mean, the essence of the Tea Party is that you want that experiment, but you don't want to go to Chile. You want it here.
Right. I mean, we're compatriots, right? We love
Yeah.
our homesteads. That's what we enjoy. So
Well, like I always say, is they're the ones that suck. Make them leave.
it's a good philosophy.
I mean, we live in Minnesota. I mean, Minnesota is a wonderful state. It's beautiful. You go up. I mean, we're podcasting right now. It's Halloween Eve, right?
Gloomy, dreary.
No, I mean,
Halloween.
it's beautiful. You got the changing leaf colors. You got just like perfect climate. In my opinion, my wife might argue this. She's always grabbing every blanket in the house and trying to get by the fireplace because she's cold. But
I'm inclined to her personally.
I know, but I love it. I mean, it's beautiful. You got a state rich with natural resources, great woods, white-tailed deer, ruffed grouse, ducks. I mean, everything that a sportsman wants. I mean, walleye, Minneapolis, St. Paul, great culture. We've got Scandinavian and German roots. It's just a wonderful thing here. And I don't want to give up that because a couple of elitists and people that have taken over government are steering us away from liberty. I'd rather stay here and fight and retain liberty because that's really what this country, or this is what the state was founded on. And I agree. I can't give up and say, I'm going to go move to Chile because right now they're just doing better in that one category. I want to stay here. And
so you're like Alex Jones.
Well, I mean, I don't put it that way. I mean, there's a lot of connotations when you throw out an accusation like that.
No, I'm just playing anyways.
Let me just venture real quick. Let me tell you what I think is the source of some of that disdain and the loss of liberty. I think.
Yeah.
Largely premised in the 17th Amendment.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Passed during the Progressive Era.
Yeah.
And in 1913, and that was passed to make it so that senators would be elected directly by the populace rather than appointed by the states.
What year?
In 1913.
Was there a connection to income tax or Federal Reserve Charter or whatever?
The only connection is that they were all abominable. As far as my perspective is
yeah, but was it like the same people? Because wasn't it Senator Nelson Aldrich and there was like these players
Woodrow
that were
Wilson
setting
presidency.
Yeah, they were setting up some because
Wilson
Woodrow
rubber-stamped all
Wilson
this.
renounced the Federal Reserve later.
Interesting.
Right?
Well,
Wasn't he the one that said
20, and the Federal Reserve hadn't even engaged in open market operations until 22.
Yes, but I thought it was Woodrow Wilson who said, I should even Google on my phone here something. He said something about
it's possible.
he sold out the country. Like he had this quote. I don't know, man. We'll figure it out in due time.
It's possible because Wilson was, his health was rapidly declining by the end of his presidency, and he eventually died. But basically, Wilson had nothing to do with the amendments really per se, because the amendments, of course, have to be ratified by 3/4 of the member states of the country, right? So really, I mean, whatever he thought about it, he may have carried some influence. But either way, let me just say quickly why I think that's the reason is because the Senate was intended to be representative of state sovereignty, right?
Yeah.
It was supposed to be likened to that of the Continental Congress, in which each state sent a certain small amount of delegates to represent that state.
Yes.
And when it did so, in fact, Fisher Ames of Massachusetts referred to the senators as ambassadors of the states in the Massachusetts Ratification Convention. The reason that
and they were referred to as things among that, whether or not ambassadors, but that's just an extension of the way they should have been viewed, and it wasn't controversial.
Right, it wasn't.
Right? Okay. And you would know more, but that's how I would think. Sure. Like, there was a time when, it was pretty blatantly obvious what their role was because it's written into the design.
And here's why that was a good thing. Senators that did not do their job could be subject to forced resignations if they did not do it within the 6-year time period to which they were elected, right?
Yeah.
This happened several times, including the seat of John Quincy Adams. The future president, the fifth president, actually resigned his seat because his beliefs and his core values conflicted with that of the Massachusetts legislature in anti-embargo policy of the Jefferson administration.
Yeah.
So, I mean, senators that had run amok could essentially be replaced by the state legislatures. And now what happens is a senator goes to Washington, becomes absconded and clothed in power, right? And they may care about what they're doing like in the last year up until their election, but in that interim period, they get away with all sorts of crazy votes that the legislature would never understand. I mean, Obamacare is a perfect example.
Great
just bring it up, right?
Well, here's that quote.
Yeah.
Woodrow Wilson, after signing the Federal Reserve into existence, he says, "I'm a most unhappy man. I've unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is controlled by its system of credit. Our system of credit is concentrated. The growth of the nation, therefore, and all our activities are in the hands of a few men. We have come to be one of the worst ruled, one of the most completely controlled and dominated governments in the civilized world, no longer a government by free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of a small group of dominant men.
Sounds like it could be Jefferson.
I wonder what he was saying. I wonder how we're supposed to interpret that.
Well, no, did you?
No, I'm being facetious. Like, it's the most explicit. Well, the creature from Jekyll Island, right?
Yeah,
Like,
That's a fantastic book.
talked about how, like,
I've actually never read the book, but I've read everything about that
they
book.
like own both sides of the debate, so it was nothing but a farce, you know. I don't know if you can get away with that in today's world, you know, with the ability of anyone to publish something online. But I mean, back in the day, they manipulated both sides of the argument.
Yep.
You know, pro and con of the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, but that whole can of worms, like, there's a million examples. I'm sure we could sit here for 5 hours and come up with where they're both sides of the argument. Like, just think of mainstream media news talking points. Like, the talking points that come across in one day, every news has the same talking point. It's just what stance do they take. And what people never realize in journalism is, like, who the hell is creating these talking points, and why are they always the same? Like, they should always be different.
Right.
So, I don't know, that's a...
For people unfamiliar with the inception of the Fed, just a very short synopsis is that...
Go for it, man. We can talk about this every time. The inception of the Fed. Go for it.
The Federal Reserve was formed by a collective amount of bankers and a few senators off the coast of Georgia on an island called Jekyll Island. It was owned by J.P. Morgan. And this legislation was essentially written by private citizens and not that of the Senate. The Constitution in Article 5 plainly states that all members of the Senate have equal suffrage and should not be, you know, espoused to oligarchy tendencies, I would say, right, in doing so. So just a short thing that book categorizes.
Oh, man, and they did it under fake names, right? Mm-hmm. And they bribed
absolutely.
people and married into their families in government to get it passed.
Yeah.
So,
If
and they
you read
did it
that
over,
book, it's just
and it was
incredible.
either that or the income tax that was done over, like, Christmas holiday, where it was a gentleman's time where they didn't pass serious stuff. I don't remember if it was the Fed or the income that was done over the holiday.
You know, if listeners here are, like, tuning out because the Fed's a boring subject, let's just...
Well, screw them, man.
No, let's just make it
We went
real
from 3 to 2.
Let's just
I
make
don't
it
care. Those
simple.
two people
Under
they're
Woodrow
brilliant
Wilson.
Yeah.
Not only did he create the Fed and the ability to tax your income directly...
The states created that by ratification of a constitutional amendment. The president has no...
The president signed it, didn't he?
Well, it doesn't matter what the president thinks. If the legislature can propose amendments to be ratified,
right.
The president has no role in constitutional amendments being passed. Only 3/4 of the member states by their ratification.
Boom, now we settled.
No, hold on. That was but the 16th Amendment was done by the legislature, not the states, was it?
Every amendment to the Constitution was done by the states. By only the ratification of 3/4 of the member states do any.
I understand. I totally understand that, but I mean, like, where it originated.
Well, the legislature.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
The president has no bearing in constitutional
amendments.
amendments.
Nobody does. It's just like saying that Obama.
His opinion might.
Yeah, but that's what I
away.
mean. Like, it's not like Obamacare.
Sure.
Yes, technically it originated in the Senate, but
You're just speaking politically. He's speaking
yeah. By
the format.
Actually, by the format.
by the functionality.
What I'm saying. So under the same president,
Sure.
you also have the prohibition of alcohol. So
And
this
17th.
This is the record. This is the record of this president, the guy that wanted to create the Federal Reserve, or oversaw the creation of the Federal Reserve, which he did sign that because that's an act, the Federal Reserve Act in 1913.
I think he's the
Also
second
part of
worst
the-
president ever, personally.
Who's
You
that?
don't think he's the worst?
No, I think Franklin Delano Roosevelt is
Well,
the
FDR
worst.
was pretty bad too.
Dude.
Don't ask me number 3 because I'll get a lot of enemies.
Who?
Abraham Lincoln.
You know what's weird is, for the record, and I'm way less educated, obviously, on the presidents because I couldn't name each one of them in a row, and a lot of people that don't even know anything about presidents can do that.
Yeah, but what does that matter?
Well, I'm
you
just
gotta
being,
know what they said.
Hey, it's just, I'm throwing facts out there. People can judge me.
They
I throw
teach
the
that
facts.
in first
I do
grade.
the facts. You judge. But no, I was gonna say, Bennerman. That's like
Sacrilege.
no. I think that's exactly how I would do it.
I think Theodore Roosevelt deserves a
Being
an association. as
Hold
well,
on,
but-
Theodore Roosevelt?
Yes, the
Oh, I was
Theodore
talking
Roosevelt.
about FDR.
no,
I mean,
he said FDR.
I think he's the worst. Yeah.
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 Oh,
number one.
sorry. Once I heard Theodore Roosevelt,
Honorable
I thought, did I
mentions.
just say
That's an
that I
honorable-
hated Theodore?
Well, no, I mean,
no,
like-
I meant FDR the whole time. That's what I'm saying.
Teddy was like
both
part of the
for me.
progressive era. I mean, like
Teddy was an idiot though
usher
too in some ways, wasn't he? Wasn't he just a big landowner and stuff?
Well, in many ways, I like him for that.
No, in many ways, I think he's
Yeah.
the coolest guy ever. Because when you drive through the oil fields, you go through Teddy Roosevelt National Wildlands or whatever. Didn't he donate all that to the federal government?
stories of like Teddy Roosevelt are great.
Oh,
but
dude! Oh,
policy
man.
wise,
There's a book
like,
called The Republican Roosevelt,
It was a-
and he's like, it's talking about a
The
lot of
propaganda on this man is far beyond that of any other president.
Teddy.
The guy usurped the Constitution in so many
Right.
ways.
Teddy?
Yes.
yeah, Teddy.
But it's
Oh.
unbelievable. Andrew Napolitano
Right.
wrote a great book about it called Woodrow and Teddy. And just
Yeah.
a few very quick examples. Once he tried to engage in a quote-unquote executive agreement with the Dominican Republic over the Senate's head.
Yeah.
And by the way, the Constitution just happens to say that, treaties have to be done with the advice and consent of the Senate. He also tried to mediate a steel strike in Ohio with no constitutional authority to do so. He really viewed the Constitution with disdain, and his presidency is really the first imperial presidency. So,
Well, what about Lincoln?
well, Lincoln, don't get me
That
started.
wasn't imperial in the
Oh,
same
it
fashion?
was.
Because you said he was the
Sure.
first, so what would be the distinction between the two?
It's a good question. I would say that the Lincoln administration was less concerned with foreign policy than Theodore Roosevelt, and thus the distinction. But Lincoln indeed suspended the writ of habeas corpus in Maryland.
Oh, God, yeah.
He
Imprisoned
deported
people that disagreed with him.
He imprisoned people that disagreed with him. Shelved 300 northern newspapers that were adversarial.
Wanted to
the
ship
reporting.
every black back to Africa with
In the
taxpayer money.
Last months of his presidency, he deported an individual from Ohio named Clement Vallandigham just for the sake that he was a Copperhead leader, and he got deported to the Confederacy. He protected slavery in the states
He
that
wanted
were
to put
loyal
slavery
to the
in the
Union.
Constitution.
Yes, he agreed in his early months as
Well, hold on.
president to
I mean, it was
codify
already
for
in
all
there,
time.
wasn't it? How was it mentioned in the Constitution?
Three-fifths.
I meant he wanted to put it as a. was it the Bill of
I
Rights?
refer that to Benner.
He wanted to codify it in a constitutional amendment
Codify.
for
See,
all
that's why I
time.
can't describe it
In his
smart
first
enough.
inaugural address, he said that he does not believe that he enjoys the right to suppress slavery in areas that it doesn't exist. And if you disbelieve him, you can reference his past speeches to find confirmation in that. Regarding slavery in the Constitution, the 3/4 clause has nothing to do with slavery.
3/5, right?
3/5 clause, yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It has nothing to do with slavery. All it has to
I didn't
do
know
with
this.
is
Oh, wow.
representative apportionment in the House of Representatives. Article 1, Section 2 says that southern states can take a totality of their states and add 3/5 of that number to their representative amount in the House, which also carries into their the electoral
Because of
college
slaves.
power.
Yeah,
Because of
fine,
slaves.
Did
fine,
not
fine,
make
like-
people's 3/5
No,
of
no,
a
no, but-
person.
but-
They were counted by the census.
But
as a
why?
person.
But hold on. But explain why that it said what it said, though. I need.
Why
to
is because the
understand that.
southern states would not ratify the Constitution without such a codification. Northerners wanted those individuals to be counted as zero. So they had more power in apportionment in the House of Representatives.
That's nutso, man.
And
That's
people
some-
don't realize this,
Yeah,
right?
I guess that makes sense.
So that ratio actually
learned something
helped
today.
to
Hey.
that ratio actually helped to eliminate slave tendencies because
Sure.
it gave those states a higher power to elect people like Thomas Jefferson, who would not have been elected if it had
The
not
tough part
been.
I have about ranking, because it's so creepy how I'd probably agree with you, because you did Obama second, you did FDR first.
No, he didn't
No.
say Obama.
Oh no, you did what? Oh my
Obama
God.
He
might
did
wrap
Wilson
up-
second.
Fuck.
Oh,
FDR first.
hold on. FDR, then Wilson.
Yeah, then Wilson.
Okay.
Then I say Lincoln. Then I
But
say
you don't think
Teddy
Obama's
Roosevelt.
even close to as bad as they are?
I do think he's
because
close,
here's the
yeah.
thing: if you look at like George W. Bush,
I think he's close. To
he's close, right? But here's the thing: you didn't see like that, and you watch fireworks, and that first one goes kaboom, and you're like, whoa, like your chest feels that. And then you're like, oh, and you're like, okay, now you're soft. Now you're soft, you're tender.
Analogy.
And then the fucker goes, and like thousands of them keep shining, and you're like, oh, like it's someone like punched you and then tickled you or something. Like Bush started with Dick Cheney. Well, God, you could go back to Brzezinski, and then with Carter, and then you go to Reagan. It's all the same pattern. Yeah. But what I'm saying is Bush is where like the left was so popular, anti-Bush, that didn't matter if you were left or right or in the middle or neither or whatever, you understood these criticisms of Bush and you're like, these are very relevant criticisms. We're not going to agree, but like the GOP that just denies the criticisms are so creepy.
Oh, it's
They're as
very
creepy as the Obama
and how
now.
similar is Obama to Bush?
That's what I'm saying. And so this dude comes out and codifies everything Bush did, and I'm like, and then people are like, is Obama worse than Bush? I'm like, you're goddamn right he is. He's exactly double worse than Bush.
He doubled down.
That's all I'm saying. Like, that's all I have to say. So
everything Bush did, he doubled down.
Worse.
He put his proverbial chip on top of the other one that was already.
And we could go on the
sitting.
classic paths of rebuttal versus re-rebuttal. Oh no, you're racist, or and of course we have to deal with all these like stupid arguments. But the fact of the matter is, if you follow anything based on the actions of what these people are doing, whether it's what they're doing with like the people that work with them, whether it's the banks or the companies that benefit from them, whether it's Halliburton with Bush or these frickin' window companies with what was it, Al Gore and stuff. I mean, I'm just saying on both sides of the coin, it's just the same story over
but you know what's
and
great?
over and over.
What I see, from the perspective of Tea Party, is there are a couple things that I think is resonating with people, and their eyes are opening up to this. I mean, look at war. War has not shrunk under Obama. War has expanded under
Double
Obama.
down on everything. Right?
He doubled down. He actually went into Libya, not constitutional, and by many people's regards, he actually was promoting an active military strike in Syria. What about
creepy as hell? Talk about extending the Iraq. You were in Iraq, weren't you?
Yeah, I was in Iraq.
Yeah. The charter of immunity, political immunity based on the new government there, was the reason why Obama did his the PR troop withdrawal. You know about this, don't you? Where basically the new government in Iraq basically said we're no longer going to, or was it Afghanistan? Am I totally mixing this up?
No. I mean, I was there in 2009, and they actually went through.
I thought it was Iraq, but
yeah, Iraq went through the. What was it? The status of force agreement, and so it was called getting out of the cities. I think that's what you're alluding to. Where
I'm thinking of the 2011 or let me see here.
Okay.
But either way, talk about that one real quick because that's interesting too.
Well, I mean, we are out of Iraq in the aggregate. I mean, like the main combat force out of Iraq, not out of Kuwait, by the way. Still have a large.
Still there too.
Yeah,
right?
Still have a large presence in Kuwait. But we have expanded the war in Afghanistan, and some people would say, "Well, I give them credit because that was where we should have been the whole time." But we got Osama bin Laden. I mean, Al Qaeda is pretty much decimated.
By the way, do either one of you think we got Osama bin Laden?
Yes.
You know,
I have no
both?
doubt. I think
You think that at the compound?
Yes, I think the suppression of videos and pictures it only propels conspiracy theories, but yes, I have no doubt.
I cannot wait for the next podcast to the whole podcast will be about that.
Al Qaeda itself has acknowledged it.
The question
but who's Al Qaeda, man? There's only 70 after 9/11? 80?
There's plenty of Al Qaeda around the world.
Yeah, but come on, man.
In Indonesia and
Cy Hirsch,
Iraq.
did you see you know who Cy Hirsch is? The Pulitzer Prize award-winning journalist.
Yeah,
who basically sat in the meetings with Dick Cheney when he was trying to paint PT gunboats, build them as Iranian, have Navy SEALs fire on regular asshole Navy, and then attack Iran. And that was in 2006. Cy Hirsch finally admitted this year that the whole bin Laden thing was a fake. You see Vice?
Ayman al-Zawahiri says it's not, and he's the leader of Al Qaeda.
Was that Vice?
So
No, that was Cy Hirsch.
I thought you said Vice.
Yeah, and then I say watch the Vice thing. Where they interview basically everyone in Pakistan, and they go, "You're nuts if you think bin Laden was in that compound."
Have you ever seen?
And they interview the kid who played in the compound every day soccer. The 8-year-old kid who played. I'm just saying. Anyways,
Have you seen Vice?
It blows my mind because I'm so I think that's the most fascinating thing. And I don't say oh, I know and you don't. That's not what I'm saying. You have every right to be as right as I am because I don't know. I wasn't there. All I'm saying is I find that so fascinating, that whole bin Laden thing. To me, that's one of the most fascinating things about
Well, I mean, why dispose the body at sea? I mean, I
now they admitted that nobody
correct.
there's no pictures of them doing that, and that nobody they have no names of anyone who was there.
Well, my issue is
the two guys who were in the compound that said that the whole shooting thing, they had completely different stories. That's another thing.
They have pictures that congressmen have seen of that, and they will not release it under the Freedom of Information Act.
Oh, God.
Many congressmen have announced that they have seen them, and they can
same
describe
congressman
them
that'll
and
lie
draw
about
them.
All that
fiscal
stuff is
issues,
exactly
yeah.
the reason I don't believe.
Oh,
it.
trust me, I'm the last person.
I'm not saying that I
give a
believe or
rubber
disbelieve.
stamp.
I'm just saying
Yeah.
the disposed body. And my question was, I contacted my congresswoman that time, and I said, "Hey, I want that body. I need a new target at the Oakdale gun range, and I wanted that body to shoot at."
No, I mean, it blows my mind because there is documentation of him being visited in the CIA hospital in Dubai or whatever around the time of 9/11. His family was in Falls Church, Virginia around 9/11, and then the dude can't move without being like on basically ICU care, and he lives in this.
A lot of the medical deficiencies have been rebutted.
Yeah, but this dude was like on the brink of death basically, and he supposedly went into the caves and tore a board. Then they found out that whole thing was a manufactured story. It was based on no intelligence.
Yeah, but hold on.
And then he's in the CIA's headquarters of the ISI in Abbottabad.
This is what bothers me is we're talking about big foreign policy on one freaking individual.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole reason.
And
it's so
our
interesting.
troops are still in Afghanistan.
Yes.
They're still being killed.
Totally.
And what are we doing? We're fighting the Taliban.
Yeah,
A tribal. I mean, seriously.
exactly.
The
Exactly.
Taliban is not our enemy in the United States.
Ladies
This
and
is
gentlemen,
ridiculous.
Jake Duesenberg, exactly.
Yeah, speaking the truth.
this
I mean, this
dude-
is so
If
stupid.
you gotta listen to someone, listen to this dude.
No, I mean it's so stupid.
Fuck yeah.
It's so stupid what we're doing over in Afghanistan. There's no
What did we say last
strategy,
time?
no
Fucking-
mission.
We're
there.
crashing barbecues.
Yeah,
Half
I
the
mean,
step, we're crashing barbecues. It's like
So-
your dog ran through a neighborhood, so you decided to like destroy every barbecue in the whole neighborhood.
Yeah,
because you said, "Oh, this
basically,
dog's
right?
so valuable that every barbecue that my dog just ran through, I'm gonna kick your girl over, slap your wife, and jump in your pool."
and it's even worse. It's like, and we're also while we're at it
Because we want to teach you how to live.
No,
I mean, bringing you
also
our
while we're
style.
at it, we're gonna spend $1,000 a month, even though we are only making $2,800 or $28,000 a year, and we're spending on top of that $3,600. I mean, that's how stupid this is. We're spending a ton of money on this. Our soldiers are dying, and what are we doing? We're fighting the Taliban, and we're building a new nation, Afghanistan, the fourth
Talk about Bagram.
poorest nation in the world. I mean, this is ridiculous.
Talk about the Baghdad bases. Was it bigger?
the billion
Bagram?
dollar
bigger than the Vatican?
No, Bagram's Afghanistan. You're talking about Baghdad.
Or what's the Baghdad one called? That's the one I meant.
No,
I
what are you
said
talking about?
Bagram thinking of Baghdad.
Yeah, what
the
do
one
you-
in, I don't know. The one in Baghdad, the embassy.
Oh, the
or
embassy.
I only know is whatever like the one compound is
Well, it
bigger
was
than
called
the
in the,
Vatican.
it was in the
dude.
green zone. I don't know if I don't know. I'm not.
Either way, yeah.
Policy expert. I don't know.
All
if
I'm
they-
saying is like the Vatican reference. Yeah, it talks about how massive the size is, creepy, but the how permanent it is I guess what I'm referring to is like, oh, we're in here to do this job so we can get out, and then you go, you're building more permanent structures there than exist anywhere in the United States practically.
Right.
These base, I mean, it's unbelievable.
But see, this is once again what we're getting back to, I don't know, like 10 minutes ago. Like, the public has seen this. Obama is not retracting our
Exactly.
foreign
That's the
print.
thesis.
And how
That's what we're
and how
saying.
about like
Yes.
you know, like Bush lied and now like he's spying on the citizens, and you remember all the liberals like up in arms about the Patriot Act. And what's Obama doing? You got the NSA scandal,
Re-extension of the Patriot.
right? Like
Yeah, exactly.
re-extending the Patriot Act,
Yeah.
signing that law, and now we find out that the NSA is collecting metadata on us. I mean, he's doubling down on everything Bush did, and he's doing far worse. And like his budgets are far worse than Bush's. Like I went
At
through
least
this.
Bush had tax and capital gains policy, right? I think.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm not
Generally.
saying like like George W. Bush is just as bad as Obama. I mean, like technically under George W. Bush,
I'm just saying
there was a tax.
This fucker got the
decrease.
party started. That's my only point.
Yeah,
he
it
got that
started a
party
long time
started.
ago.
He turned the fucking radio up, and Obama came in, and all he did was mess with the EQ and the reverb.
Kinda.
And then everyone voted him in, and he goes, "See, I'm hip." And then he just took that volume knob like Spinal Tap and turned that shit to 11.
And oh, by the way,
And,
T Mage,
Terror.
as I'm told all the time by my friends at the Republican establishment, but you got to vote for George W. Bush because it's all about Supreme Court justices. The same guy that appointed Justice Roberts, who found Obamacare constitutional under the taxing provision.
Well, what was the contradiction
I mean, that's what
there?
we're always told.
What was the contradiction there? Like the way that he pitched it was one way, and then the way that he upheld it was
They
constant.
had said it's not a tax.
Not a tax.
This whole time,
The whole
right?
time, and then that was how they got it
It's not a
passed.
tax, and all of a sudden, Justice Roberts, who is the Chief
so
Justice,
bad.
writes an opinion that essentially says anything, as long as it's connected to a tax, is constitutional. Which, by the way, is far beyond the arguments that were made in the ratification conventions, right? But
does that
and then
resonate with 16th
The
Amendment?
administration all of a sudden, goes, oh wait, yeah, it's a tax, it's legit, you know.
Yeah,
It's-
and you know what? The people who
Jay
supported
Carney
it,
was saying that the next day, I
the
think.
people who already supported that, guess how many it alarmed when they did that? 0.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
This week
is that-
alone.
like no one, I never heard anyone go, I supported that until the slimy ass way that we pushed this shit through real fast, and now I question this whole thing. No one said that, but that's a normal reaction to someone
know.
like, hey, you want to join my like motorcycle gang? Give me $50. Here's our jacket. Oh, it says dirt bags on the back, or whatever. And then you're like, okay. And then you go to a bar and the guy starts stabbing people, and you're like, whoa, and you're like, well, you're in the gang. Like you wanted the gang, right? Like you got the jacket. Like just jump in, man.
That's
how
what it seemed like. You know?
It was that creepy, that slimy to people that were probably all three of us plus millions of dollars. You viewed it like that, and you're like, I told you, you idiots. I mean, that's how they passed it. Like,
Even
it's a
Anthony
deception.
Kennedy, who has not been a friend to the construction of the Constitution in the past, thought that the Constitution did not give the government the ability to tax for any purpose.
Right.
And in my book, which is upcoming, here's the quick plug, right?
Do it. Plug it for
I will
like 10
demonstrate
minutes.
many cases where,
Yeah.
in the ratification conventions, it was completely scorned that the government had the ability to tax for any purpose to the benefit of the state.
Do you got a name of that book?
Yeah, that book is tentatively titled Compact of the Republic, Understanding the Constitution as Agreement Among the States.
God, that's a beautiful title.
And Benner's going to be he's going to be a contributor to the new Tea Party magazine that we're publishing in November.
And that's much different than Mage. That's the Tea Party magazine.
Tea Mage is part of the Tea Party.
Otherwise, it would be called Mage Party, the magazine.
That's
We are your party.
Completely
Isn't
different.
that the whole time in Mage Studios is the Mage Party, I thought. Right?
Well, that's
We're drinking.
We call it a party. Yeah, we're drinking some good beers. We were talking about like the uniting of people that have the same, let's call it descent. Thomas Jefferson once said, right? And everyone has been the same quote is like 5 people in constitutional America. Like everything Ben Franklin said, Thomas Jefferson said. But descent is the highest form of patriotism, right? And like something along those lines. And so we were talking before, like when you unite ideas, people from different collectives realize that the collective is garbage, and it's just a way that once it's united and it's cohesive, very cohesive as a unit, the self-sustainability of that unit becomes important, if not the most important thing about the unit. So therefore political parties and stuff lose their ideologies all the time, and they have to constantly reinvent themselves to be a group. And so that's why we're talking about a million times, and we'll always talk about it no matter how many times you drink beers and podcasts. Like Ron Paul was the dude that united people from all across many different things, start the Tea Party, whether or not you even like within the first couple months agreed that, oh, I even want to have it called the Tea Party. I think it was until like Republican Congress people and some senators started getting involved that it became a right-wing idea. Like I feel like there was a decent amount of time when it wasn't even a right-wing idea. Do you have anything to say about that? Or?
What does right wing, left wing mean anymore?
Well, that's the right answer. I was
it's
just
such a
trying to
stupid
play
term.
on the ways that people, because I'm just
like, to me, left wing means something. It means like Marxist tendencies. Right wing, I have no idea what that even means.
well,
Same thing.
You know what I mean?
I agree from one perspective, but I completely disagree because there are people out there. There's like 5 left, but that are like classic liberal. Because that's my favorite way to identify myself. Because that's libertarian.
But is that left
But
wing?
It's like libertarian. Well,
that's
my
not left
point
wing.
is,
yeah.
I'm like
Here's what I use.
I'm a trendy classical liberal because I wasn't alive 100.
This is a guy in a
200
Batman shirt.
200 years ago. I know, I love it. 200 years ago, I wasn't alive that I know of, unless we're Hindu.
You're a voluntarist, right? Voluntary action is the way to live one's life. Right?
That's what I'm saying, but that's what's so funny is
think
like
you can
I feel
put
like
that on the
classical
left-right
liberal is a
dichotomy.
hilarious term because like you can say it and the way it sounds is conveying something coy because you know like 8 out of 10 people aren't going to get it.
Right.
But the way that you said it is 100% legit. because you're identifying with the principles of people who are in a constitutionally limited government, and they're like, no matter what I do, eventually this shit's going to go astray. How do I fight this the most to preserve liberty?
Well,
and there was a lot of classical liberals 250, 290 years ago.
Well, not even that
were
long.
doing that, right?
Voltaire and Alex
well, hold on.
de Tocqueville.
Like Milton Friedman in Capitalism and Freedom, like he actually and I think that's a book in the 50s, writes in the terms of classical liberal for, talking about basically what we call libertarians nowadays, or
exactly
conservatives. And so in like the third or fourth edition, I can't remember, they actually they have to write that classical liberal refers to someone who views things in the perspective of liberty.
Right, like later down the road, they had to put that in there.
They had to put it in there.
To.
So the way I
exactly.
talk about this stuff is, are you an individualist or are you a collectivist?
Well,
I think
there you go.
That's a real argument, okay?
Absolutely.
But
what does that mean? Because you're inferring that's within the confines of the state, right? Like if you're in a tree house and there's only 10 sandwiches and 8 people, and you're going to go, are you an individualist or collectivist? Well, there's no state, but everyone should say, well, right now I'm a collectivist. We're going to cut them shits up and everyone's going to get a piece. That's
the great point.
So that's why I'm saying those philosophical words. They're so easy when, let's call them the left or the liberals, want to use them back against, let's call them the anarcho-capitalists.
Right.
And they go, you're so individualist, and don't you get, I'm not saying like you don't get it, I'm just saying this in broad terms, but don't you get, or don't people get why sometimes libertarian minds seem static to other people? Because they don't get statism.
Right.
That's the catalyst. That's where the Adam Kokeshes of the world, to me and Benner and you somewhat, are valuable. Because you go, somewhat. Yeah, you like that. But like we have different opinions on Kokesh.
Sure.
I love the dude, but he's crazy in a lot of ways, and 90% of the crazy is good crazy.
Real quick, just what you said. I mean, I think too many people get caught up in the left-right dichotomy. To me, the real dichotomy is liberty versus tyranny. That's what we should all be fighting.
That's another way to put it. Yeah, exactly.
That's it. That's it. Because I always say
the former rather than the latter.
I always say, man, like in a let's call it totalitarian society or like whatever, right? And I didn't invent this, but maybe the way I'm saying it is my original way. But you can be in a free society and you can collectivize freely, and then you can go in the woods and you can have a socialist compound in the woods. You can have a monarchy in the woods in your property or whatever, as long as you're not offending someone else's property rights stemming from their property means their body, and then everything else that they're using extended from that. However, in a totalitarian society or a socialist society, you can't go in the woods, build a fucking fort, and say we're libertarian, freedom, anarcho-capitalists in here, because they'll come in there and they'll tax your ass, and they'll ticket you, and if you don't pay them, they'll put you in a cage, and if you don't do that, you'll just die in a cage or they'll kill you. I mean, that's the fucking difference, and it's so simple to see it. Doesn't matter if it's Chile, doesn't matter whatever it is. In a free society, if it's voluntary socialism, then I'm a goddamn socialist. Because if you come in my property and I have 50 acres and you're starving and you got like 50 fucking people and they're like, I'm going to die feeding these people because it's going to be that easy. Because if I'm sitting out there and there's people that need help, that's what humans do. But it's so, and I don't know, I'm not going to be eloquent anymore, but there's like another saying, and it is, it's a saying, so now I'm supposed to be eloquent. But it basically talks about, you guys are just killing me. I know, like,
killing yourself.
I always kill myself.
What beer?
But no, it just talks about basically like, oh, you're so compassionate, like, oh, you want to like forcefully take money from other people to help other people, like, wow. It's like, no, like, even whether it's Jesus
well, that's
or
what the libertarians always say,
go help them, like, that's the point. Like, there's no way that you can be more powerful than helping someone else.
Right.
The way you can be the least powerful is using someone else to use force to take money from someone else to give to like the fourth party. That's the least compassionate thing you could ever do.
That's what like these purist libertarians always like. It like bothers me. They're like, well, they always bring it back to the state, and some things, I agree with the libertarians on issues regarding the state all the time. But I do believe in things in the collective, in communities, usually communities.
You have to be, because that's how we are as species.
Well, sometimes you're not. I mean, Benner is like an individualist down to the core. Like, even in our...
Philosophically, I'd like to think
even in our social group, like, I remember once, like, we were all going in, like, we were all putting $10 in, and we were all going to get, like, food for this like
this is funny. This
weekend
is
at the
awesome.
cabin, and Bear's like, no, dude, man, I'm not gonna do it. You guys don't eat the same food as I do. He's like individuals to the core, man. You gotta love that shit. Like I guess I'm the collectivist between us, but even though we agree totally on philosophies regarding the state.
The Fifth Amendment exists, so I don't have to incriminate.
No, we're not talking about the state, so the Fifth Amendment doesn't apply here.
No, I don't have to incriminate you being correct on this.
Dude, this is so... I have a good idea, because I know we were going to talk... Well,
Kokesh?
yeah, let's talk about him real quick.
Yeah, we gotta do it before I take it
We
off
had,
here.
we had a little bit
Your
of
One of your fans wanted to talk about him, right?
I know, we got to talk about this.
His-
Is that the last on the people want to start?
Yeah. So
Let's just take turns kind of saying what we think.
hold on. Well, yeah, sure. Because I was just gonna say real quick. Basically, I consider myself a fan of Adam Kokesh, a friend of Adam Kokesh. I don't know him well enough to know. I mean, you know, people like on certain levels and everything. I've been around him several times, helped him out, done work with him a bunch of times. And God, I've never seen a dude that appeared and just genuinely came across as so passionate for the cause of liberty. I mean, honestly, to the core, I don't think I've in my life met a dude as passionate as Adam Kokesh and is focused. Now, his means are pretty extreme in a lot of ways, and that's where Jake's going to be able to help us out from that perspective. I know Dave and I are on one kind of tip here because we both admire Adam Kokesh for those kind of ballsy moves that he's done, and probably, and I'm speaking on behalf of Dave quickly, but for his understanding of why he's making the moves that he's making. And that's what's so impressive is philosophically, I think a lot of times he's very true. Now, basically, I can't talk too much about because I'm not that smart on it, what's happening with him, but apparently, he loaded the shotgun under constitutional law in Liberty Plaza, sort of like when he danced at Jefferson Memorial and you got like choke slamming on a marble floor, because obviously Thomas Jefferson would want that. So he's loading a shotgun in Freedom Plaza or whatever, and the reason, if you listen to Adam Kokesh, like the reason he did it, one of the main reasons is, now I'm going to butcher this, and I'll look it up here on Google, but it was like Helen DC or some case, or Heller or something, where I think it was someone that was even working for the government. Someone challenged the DC gun laws because they wanted to carry for protection, and they won in the Supreme Court. So the law was deemed unconstitutional.
Heller versus DC, I think.
Damn. See, that's what I'm saying. So basically, Kokesh is saying, you know what? I know the Constitution. I swore an oath to it. I fought for it in Iraq. I was part of the civil affairs team, whatever. I've devoted my freaking life on donations, and I've done all this shit, and now I'm passionate about it. I got chokeslammed for dancing. Now I'm going to just affirm that the Supreme Court is right. So the dude is taking the Constitution in the Supreme Court, and he's challenging this psycho Judge Dredd dressed woman, the chief of DC police, looks like a freaking cartoon character who hasn't combed her hair in a year, probably has some dry ass sex all the time. This woman is just awful. Just Google this woman. I don't give a shit if she comes after me and kills me. This woman is the most scary person that puts on a Gaddafi uniform in this country. Now go look at this fucking woman and then compare her and her DC gun laws to a Supreme Court case mixed with the Constitution, and that's where I stand with Adam Kokesh, and I hope from my caveman perspective here with a little bit of back knowledge that makes some sense. So I'll let Benner go a little bit on this one, but like that's how I approach this thing of Adam Kokesh.
I'm gonna help to fire Jake up here, right? And I know that we have honest discourse on this, and that's fine, right? We're compatriots, right?
Yeah. For sure.
So what I will say is that in their time, the Sons of Liberty were deemed extremists in Boston specifically, and I look at Kokesh as the Samuel Adams or John Hancock of his day. He was extremist to the core as far as loyalist publications were pronounced, but he believed that strongly that the centralized authority in that time was the British Crown, had completely overstepped the bounds of the British Constitution, which was not a written document, but was a collective of written documents, cases, and precedents, right? So I believe that Kokesh very much would be considered the rebel rouser that John Adams and or Samuel Adams and John Hancock were. I have to say, when he was choke slammed in the Jefferson Memorial, one of the things that he said was powerful to me and stuck out, and I actually mentioned this before. He essentially said that you know what? I do have a license to be here, and it's the same license that I acknowledged when I swore an oath to uphold it as a member of the U.S. Marine Corps, and I'm pretty sure that instrument says something about freedom of assembly. So that's one powerful thing.
Hell yeah.
I think that the centralized authority cannot abridge gun rights. If you want to load a gun, that's unapproachable according to the First Amendment of the Constitution. So, all right, I'm good.
Well, you said First Amendment. You meant Second
Or
Amendment.
that's the Second
All right,
Amendment,
there
of
you go.
course.
But
Thank
yeah,
you.
that's people knew what you meant. All right.
Of course.
Was like my rebuttal time here.
Well, no, man. We just want to make sure you get some talk. Well, yeah, in a way it is because we want to make sure you can talk. Because I know you have. But here's the thing, man. I don't think we think you don't have great points because you do have great points about like the contradictory argument of the way you approach these issues.
Sure.
Well, that's
right?
what it's all about. It's like, I don't know if Adam and I really disagree on a constitutional argument or the cause of liberty. I just think he goes about it the wrong direction. I mean, you have to inspire people. If we're still living under the current state of political affairs, you're not winning over the argument, in particular with a voting demographic that is heavily more tilted towards females today than it was during the era of the Sons of Liberty, as Benner alluded to during our founding. I think he scares the crap out of suburban housewives, and they don't understand his argument. Like loading a shotgun in Washington, D.C., they see something like that, and they think this guy's crazy. And I guess I alluded, I'm not great with analogies, but let's just say two different people in Hollywood are trying to make an argument. One's Miley Cyrus and the other one's Carrie Underwood. Who are we going to listen to? I mean, we're going to listen to Carrie Underwood because she's more credible. Well, like Adam Kokesh comes across as the Miley Cyrus in the political world.
I want a third choice in that.
Yeah, no one's gonna listen.
so awesome, man. That
But no one's gonna listen. No one's gonna listen to
silent.
that. They think he's crazy.
Yeah, but
and,
who's pushing the envelope towards the truth? Who's to say Miley Cyrus isn't?
Well, no. Here's what I'm saying. Let's say Miley.
I could be
Miley.
like, yeah,
I'll
she's
do this
not-
analogy.
Go ahead,
Miley
yeah.
and Carrie are both trying to promote the same cause.
Agenda.
Same cause, yeah.
Right.
But one is crazy, deemed by most people that follow Hollywood.
For sure.
And the other one is probably a legitimate person in many circles.
For sure.
Well, that's kind of like Kokesh versus, I'll just use Rand Paul.
I think we would both agree with you 100%, but check this out. Here's an argument. What if Miley Cyrus has liberty tattooed in her fucking ass, and she bends over and shows that to everyone, and people are like, I am never watching TV again, grandma's heads explode, all that stuff happens.
Yeah,
but
I wouldn't
at the
want to
end
see
of the
that.
day, what if 300% more people tuned into Liberty because they went and studied that shit?
Yeah, but maybe they're tuned off.
Who's better? Who's better at the end of the day?
No, but
that's the question. Right? And I don't have an answer.
No, they might be tuned off though. That's the
my point.
issue. Yeah,
But they at
I'll
least
say that loyalists were certainly turned off by the efforts of the Patriots.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that was a significant block.
I think no matter what, the people who are out there, like the people who are so passionate, like the dude who, do you ever read the suicide or whatever it was of the dude who crashed his Cessna into that tax building or the government building or whatever?
No idea. Oh,
Remember?
down
It
in
was
Dallas?
Is that what it was? Yeah.
Yeah, because
Dude,
my
it was
brother
like a
lived,
guy,
works
right?
down in that area.
Now I'm gonna be on every watch list. I'm never gonna be able to be. I'm gonna be on the no-fly list after this. But no, this fucker, like, oh, he's a nutball. You know, he crashed into a building. He probably killed people with his plane, right?
Generally,
Innocent
that's
people.
called a nutball.
Yeah, exactly. But exactly. But it's sort of like the Charles Manson theory. Like Charles Manson, some people, it's creepy. You read his YouTube comments, and there's like thousands of people that they like worship Charles Manson because they're like, this is like a brilliant mind that, you know, it did terrible things, but like I want to learn from this mind. Well, they're like 1% true. Like there's a lot of like amazing things you could learn from it. Now, should we learn from it like standing back perspective? Exactly. Not an emulation of this person, but like the points they're making. What if Charles Manson had E equals MC squared, right? Like you wouldn't fucking not listen to that. You would understand it and then forget about Charles Manson, but understand what he's trying to portray to you. So my point is these dudes that are going crazy all the time, whether it's, and I don't mean Adam Kokesh is going crazy, but people are trying to put him in the perspective like he's going to self-destruct, like he's going to prison. You know what I mean? I get that. And I actually worry for him because I know the dude. And so he's in this category. Well, then you jump up 5 categories, and it's the dude who fucking crashes his plane into whatever building. If you read his like ramblings, even though they weren't even that bad, like they were pretty concise, and he was talking about basically the Federal Reserve, like all this shit, but no one wanted you to read it. So the
I
news
didn't know
station,
that. Yeah.
yeah, that's
I
what I'm
never even
saying.
heard that. It's
yeah,
crazy.
Team Mage, man. I'm just like, I want to hear what this guy had to say. Like, the fucking crashed his plane into a building. Someone's got to read his shit.
It's funny.
Come on,
don't
let me
even
give him
ask
like
those
5
questions.
minutes. You know what I'm saying?
I
Like,
assume his coordinates were off or
because
something.
I've read. Oh my god, terrible. His family's listening, not. But you know, like I'm just saying, like sometimes you learn something or you go through something in life and you're like, I want to fucking crash a plane into a building. Like you don't think that, but you have that emotion.
Yeah.
It's like 1,000 rungs lower. But some people have like 50 things stacking up on their psyche, everything, and they have maybe he was the most in his brain at a certain point in time, maybe a month before that. Maybe he was the most brilliant. He had everything figured out, right? On a philosophical, intellectual level, but psychologically and on a relationship level, everything, like his whole life went to shit that our life will never, God bless, never go to. Whatever. My point is you're supposed to just demonize like his brain. And so like it's interesting because a lot of times you look at the extreme events in society and then you actually look at the people who are doing them and you go, wow, like I think they actually kind of saw the world in a way that's a lot more accurate than Rachel Maddow was talking about that shit.
Yeah, but how's that apply
should
to
be
Adam
everyone.
Kokesh? I mean,
Because
like,
people are portraying him as the dude that crashed his fucking Cessna into a building.
I know, but
and you're
you
going,
have
so
to be,
don't listen to his points.
Yeah,
and
but you got to
go,
be cognizant of that. I'm not saying
of
like.
what? Wait, maybe.
Hold on,
but of
we're
what?
very logical people, and we'll
hope so.
Yeah, I know, but you got to understand, we're dissecting what Adam Kokesh's message is, and we all can understand it. We get it, all right? But I'm
sure.
being very smart about this and saying, look at the overall populace. We have to win over the populace on this. Who better to carry the message? Adam Kokesh, guy that looks like he's straight out of the Marine Corps, who is shouting at law enforcement as they're handcuffing him, throwing him to the ground, or the mom who's got a little daughter that's watching her mom being detained just because she decided she needed to have a handgun because that's part of her protection.
I
for
totally
her family.
agree with everything you just
and
said.
that's the thing is I don't think Adam Kokesh gets that. He's not the right person to carry that.
But look how
message
you're
forward.
analyzing it. You're an investment guy.
Yeah.
You got to diversify your income coming in. That's all going to who you are,
Diversify.
right? So some of that shit you're putting in aggressive funds.
Well,
You're
I know,
maybe
but
you're
I'm-
going to buy
I'm-
a little more gold than you wanted. Maybe you're going to put it into some life insurance policy, and you're going to funnel all that to the aggressive funds. That's the Adam Kokesh funds, bro.
Yeah, but, like,
and you
it's
don't put
spilling
all
over and
your
hurting.
stuff in some average
No,
ass
but it's
fund.
like spilling over and hurting the other funds.
Yeah, if
using
that
your analogy.
aggressive
That's
stuff
the issue.
crashes, it hurts your funds. Exactly.
Kokesh has inspired a tireless minority, and I'll just say this, that 3% of 3 million individuals deposed the greatest military on
Boom.
God's green earth.
That's an awesome fact.
Well, I
Love
think
that
it's
fact.
the Tea Party that's doing that. I don't think Kokesh is necessarily doing that.
Dude, the Tea Party may be valuable,
That-
but
that's
that's not
exactly
like,
our
it's not
mission.
encompassing a whole positive movement. I mean, it encompasses a large part of a positive movement, but there's so much more to that movement. Like you can't
right,
just-
but like in everything that Kokesh is,
like Rand Paul wants you to think that's the only movement that's doing anything in this.
it
country.
really is when you look at the aggregate. Like
Yeah, if
the
you have
biggest,
faith in the statism, like the controlled political process,
well, sure. If you don't want to
we're
work
gonna go
inside,
vote in Afghanistan.
I know if you don't want to work inside the
campaign in
system,
Afghanistan.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But I mean, like as far as mass political movement, if it's not the Tea Party, who is it? There's no other movement that's that
No,
big.
I'm just
and
trying
that
to challenge
ability.
these ideas so we can hit them from all angles, But you're right. I mean, there's not. You can't challenge it directly. I can't sit here and give you an answer. You're right. You're totally right. I can't
Thank
go.
you.
But yeah, no, pound it, dude. No, you know what I'm saying. Like, I know philosophically, like on the macro, absolutely. I was just saying, like, it's not the only thing. That was why I jumped in there. But at the same time, you're right. Like, I can't go the Tea Party. Well, yeah, there's nothing.
Just one thing about the Tea Parties that I think is being overlooked too is it's attracting
Obamacare people. That's what challenges them.
It's attracting some people that you wouldn't normally.
creaky ass door.
It's like an old 1800s mansion you got going
Oh,
there.
it's great, man.
But
Sound effects.
it attracts
It's like soundboard.
It attracts some people you wouldn't normally think might be attracted. Like we have objectivists that come that are premised in the ideologies of Ayn Rand and
Right.
are atheist. I mean, I wouldn't
Yep.
agree with that tenet of their beliefs. And then we have some that are pure libertarians.
Yeah, Libertarian Party reps. And
the
stuff
Tea
that come
Party
in.
is much more overarching, I think, than people kind of give it credit for. I certainly don't liken it to the GOP, at least the ideals that it's founded upon, at least ours.
Exactly.
Remember, Tea Parties are autonomous.
I think
are
several
unlikened
members
to the
of the GOP
GOP.
might actually acknowledge that too.
Yeah.
But then they're caught between like, what's my role versus what do I believe in at home?
Right.
I have to fit in that boundary, and then you get the Rand Pauls versus the Ron Pauls, who Ron Paul tried to quit Congress, and then people 10 years later were like bringing him back. Like, that's one thing. People are like, oh, really? He didn't want to come back? I'm like, no, he didn't. The guy you could watch and try to leave Congress just so he could deliver babies. And then, did you ever see his home in Texas when it went up for sale, like in 07 or 08?
Yeah, that was funny.
Dude, it was like a Brooklyn Park or whatever. It was like a
it was pretty modest.
250. I mean, it had a fence in the backyard with a swimming pool. Oh, what an elitist.
And he was a doctor.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like this.
He was a doctor. He birthed thousands of children.
He was a doctor for like 40, 50 years, like whatever. And he had like a $250,000 home with a fence and pool.
And so was Rand.
It was like
right?
the perfect.
I don't know. I think he's made some pretty good money over the years. So
Well,
His books have had
All right,
to.
man.
But
I don't know. I couldn't disagree.
Well, yeah, big time. But you know what I admire about the guy is, despite that, his voting record was always great.
Sure.
And that's what I like. And he was a strict constitutionalist in an era that there aren't a lot of strict constitutionalists
That's
anymore.
true.
And that's what I really appreciate about this sort of country. You know, one thing that I found fascinating, and this was, I don't really talk to Congress a lot because they don't listen. Surprisingly, they did on Syria, but they don't generally listen. But I did.
Yeah, that was interesting.
I did talk to Congressman Bachmann back in 2010 when the Republicans took over the majority in the House again, and I talked to her. I said, use whatever leverage you have to get Ron Paul to chair the subcommittee on domestic monetary policy, because they oversaw the Fed. And I said, that's a very important issue to me, because this is the one guy that's critical of what the Fed's doing. And so lo and behold, somehow through the crazy power structure out in Washington, D.C., they gave him that position. And it was surprising as hell. And then I find out, not the day later.
That's
not where I'm going with that.
That's a Paul Bunyan over here.
I find out, I think through a Ron Paul speech, months after this occurred, that the day after he got that chairman position,
Sure.
they took away his oversight over the Federal Reserve. So essentially, they gave him the chairman position.
Took away his power.
Yeah,
of
with no power.
See,
So, like,
I guess I forgot about
his
that.
hearings were like nothing more than bringing
forgot.
in like Jim Grant and Peter Schiff and
Yeah,
people from
yeah.
the Mises Institute
Right.
to debate
That was
thing.
phenomenal,
Yeah,
by the
but
way.
no longer could he call
Right.
Ben Bernanke in front of his committee.
They gave him basically a room to have his circle jerk.
Exactly.
People that knew what they were talking about, while everyone else that was actually fingers on the buttons was like, yeah, you go over there in the corner. and talk."
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't that crazy?
It's unbelievable.
Like Betty McCollum.
Yeah.
Well, the thing with Michelle Bachmann was, she was saying one time, I don't remember if it was before, I think it was even before a Ron Paul speech at the U of M I was at or something, but it was just like,
a few years ago. I remember.
yeah, it was just something about how basically like Ron Paul for decades or some has had a lunch every Wednesday or something in DC.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
like,
She's
if you want
always
to
at it.
come and talk, well, that's the thing is she gets all this credit from people from our state, whereas she was one of like the last people that jumped in on this thing, but she was such a big name, big
Sure.
face
Yeah.
Sure.
that she gave it legs. And so people like us, whether we knew it or not, are supporting people like Bachmann saying, give this idea legs. And I'm proud of that philosophically, just saying like, yeah, anybody who wants to give this idea more coverage, like I'm on board. But at the same time, on the political news spectrum, it's like, no, Michelle Bachmann's head blew up. Ron Paul is the factor behind it, but the idea itself is just like the last thing you discuss. It's more about, oh, Michelle Bachmann's gaining ground. And I'm like, you know what? And I don't even want to get into this. We don't have time tonight. But I'm just like, Michelle Bachmann, I have like more reasons to not like her than I have to like her flat out. I just do.
Well, voting wise, you have more reasons
Not
to like
me.
her than not like her.
Voting wise, I have more reasons to like her.
Yeah, I mean,
on
for me as
paper,
well.
on paper, yes, for
Well,
all
that's-
three of us.
Well, what do you mean? I mean, like,
Yes.
voting, like,
Do I think that she has the capability? Well, first, okay, I'll address it real fast. Patriot Act renewal, right? She voted to renew that, right?
Right.
She
Yeah.
held this fucking Ron Paul position until the very day she voted for that shit. And then you know what she said? I adopted like 180 kids in my life or whatever she did. I fear for their safety because I have so many kids that I knew I had to vote
She's
for
got
the
a
Patriot
horrible
Act.
record.
That's my point.
Yeah, no,
that's one fucking thing.
I
where
know,
you go,
but-
if you take that and it doesn't hit you right here, then you're not paying attention. That's how I feel about
Team
it.
Mage, you gotta look at.
I think that supersedes
overall
1,000 tax bills because it doesn't take any balls whether you're Michelle Bachmann or Ron Paul.
No, it does.
True.
She was one of like 22.
Get out of here.
She was like one
Compared
of
to the
20,
Patriot
hold on.
Act
She was
at
like
that time.
She was one of 22 legislators that stood up and said, "No, we will not increase the debt ceiling." And to me, that was like one of the most important. I mean, we wouldn't even talk about.
It is one of the most. Totally
yeah, we wouldn't even
agree.
like talk
No,
about the
that's
Patriot Act because
totally
there's no
agree.
funding for it if they don't even pass.
What is it when they write a book about what was happening right now, 50 years from now? What is going to look? What is going to be the
I
most
think that book's
resonant?
going to talk about the debt ceiling because that's
Dude,
what's
the
our final demise.
195th time they raised it versus Michelle Bachmann, who
Yeah, but
tricked
right-
everyone into thinking she stood for the Constitution and then is going to sell out at any cost for
See,
the
I'm not
police state.
disagreeing with you. I actually had a phone conversation with her. It was a couple months ago. Jack and I were on the phone with Michelle for an hour, and I think she was trying to, like, get us to see her side as leaders in the Tea Party about the NSA scandal.
That's what I was going to bring
and we
up
stood
as my
firm
call.
against
That's
her.
what
I said, Congresswoman, this is not right.
See?
This is not right.
Think
but-
about... Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
But
Keep
you know,
going.
I look at it in the
I'm
greater...
loving this conversation.
I know, but I
love
look at
this.
it, and listen, I was firm against her, and I never caved on that. And I totally disagree with her this day about the NSA scandal and the Mage Amendment. I disagree with her on the provisions of Patriot Act renewal.
Sure. Yep. Yeah.
But
yeah.
I also say when you look at her overall voting record, it was much. It's not that bad, and especially when you look at it relative to all the other people out there in Congress.
I agree.
It's a very
I
good
agree
record.
with that as well.
Right. So I at least
Don't-
want to
I do.
acknowledge.
No,
it.
I do.
But
But
let's just stand here and say we're not going to have Justin Amash and Ron Paul.
Yeah.
I would love to have all those people in Congress.
get it.
We'd be much better.
But you got a person voting on the spreadsheet to be fiscally conservative, and then you have a person also standing for like not only big government policies, but policies that mirror. Here it comes. The New World Order, the UN, all that type of shit, where it's basically foreign governments.
No, I
trickling
don't think
down
that's
through
her.
Are you out of your mind?
Yeah,
dude?
you know what my
She'll
perspective...
support every big government policy
No,
on a
here's my
police
perspective.
state,
You know what my perspective
on the
is on that?
military, on any of that stuff, dude.
My perspective on this is Michelle, she's read probably too many Tom Clancy books. And finally she's in a position where she can be that character in the Tom Clancy books. Or she could be Jack Bauer.
Exactly.
And so she looks at that, but I don't think she's looking at it as
She
one
wants to
big
use the
government.
state
I don't agree with that. But she sees it as like
the best.
you can actually see the side that everyone could see, on the show 24, and so we know for certain that.
Do you know
this is
Larkin
the right
Rose,
thing.
the redheaded YouTube anarchist?
No, I don't.
Really?
No.
Oh, that's cool. He's awesome. You should check him out. But anyways, he had a saying, and it's probably not his, but no, and I'll butcher his even. But it was something about you got to stop thinking about this shit. The government can't solve a problem that is from before the government exists.
Right.
Right?
Right.
That's why Michelle Bachmann is a fucking psycho.
Nullification.
Because Michelle Bachmann believes in all these things, like the Patriot Act. Fundamentally, this is my whole point, and then I want to be done. I mean, you can talk about it
I'd
for an
like to
hour.
weigh on this too.
Well, yeah, no, please do in 5 seconds.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd love to hear.
5 seconds.
All I'm saying is, Michelle Bachmann is that prototype that Larkin Rose quote is talking about, where she believes somehow, because she's so screwed up philosophically, somewhere fundamentally so fucking screwed up, that she takes her, whether it's her religion or whatever, she uses her religion and her kids for the Patriot Act, first of all. And that's where I'm going to stop, because I'm not smart enough to think of all of her other bills. But she's trying to fix with the government, and not just local government, big government. She's trying to fix society's problems, which is what tyranny is. So therefore, she cannot not be tyrannical, because she has no moral and philosophical backing to understand that society's problems need to be fixed by society and not government. And the more she injects that big syringe of government into society, she's hurting, not helping. So anyways, now I'm
I
done.
do think she has philosophical found beliefs, and I can say that with conviction because she's one of the only Austrian friends that we have in the house. She's well acquainted with the works of Ludwig von Mises and Friedrich von Hayek and others, and has been, really
Do they want to spy on people?
No, and I was just going to say, I do agree with you. I have a problem with the Patriot Act's extension. I think it's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. And I have a problem with her opposing the Amash Amendment because I believe that Amash had the most sound view on this. However, indeed, if you look at her voting record, it's actually largely been one of opposing such overarching programs. Right. That's not to say I endorse the things that I have qualms with, but her voting record has been better than, a lot of people that get credit.
And that's where I got to agree with both of you. I mean, in a lot of ways, absolutely. So keep going. Yeah. I would agree with that.
I just think, I agree with Benner. Philosophically, I think she gets it. I just think where she diverts from it, because I'm not disagreeing that she isn't diverting from it. I think she diverts from it because somehow she thinks there's this caveat to it because, she sits on the, House Intel Services Committee or Intel
James Bond Committee,
right? Which is probably nothing but a bunch of propaganda.
James
right?
Bond was the market solving problems, right?
Yeah.
The government assassin.
But you know what I mean? It's probably a bunch of propaganda, right?
Yeah.
And so,
for sure.
And so here's someone that's probably
We're not disagreeing with that.
Someone that's read Tom Clancy books her whole life.
Okay.
It's probably I must act.
Okay.
And I think she diverts from that philosophy because she has this perception of saving the nation. And let me just put it this way. If you knew tomorrow that you would infringe on someone's rights because you knew for a fact they were going to strap a bomb and blow up the city or a city hall, you wouldn't have any problem for infringing on that person's rights because you think of it as saving your fellow man because they are going to commit.
It's a can of worms, though, isn't it?
No.
Am I supposed to assassinate them?
I'm saying you understand it.
Until they're about to bomb me.
No. What I'm saying is you understand. Perfect world. You understand it. That's what's going to happen.
Are you talking about preemptive violations of liberty on behalf of protecting society?
It's very easy in Hollywood when we know where that character's going. We know that path.
Yes.
So let's say in this imaginary world.
In a perfect world, it's easy to see.
And that's where I think Michelle's living. Is she's like, oh, well, they told me this on the Intel committee.
Yes.
And this is what's going to happen, and I am saving the nation, and that's really where I think she diverts from this.
If you say
philosophy.
that, and I say a little more, I said f-bombs probably a couple times, but I mean, I feel like we kind of said the same thing, right?
Yeah, we didn't disagree. I'm just saying.
Right? We said it in completely different ways, but
no, I think you view her as she's selling off to this philosophy.
Yeah,
she doesn't
but
really
the way
have,
you put it, I think
grounded.
was so warm fuzzy blanket, because you're talking about a fun novel when all you're saying is she's just bypassing her role as a representative to do what it has to do to get whatever her goal is based on her philosophical beliefs. Whereas, as a representative, you're supposed to be fundamentally based in your philosophical beliefs within the confines of who the hell is you're representing.
Well, maybe I have a little bit.
And the Constitution.
Maybe I have a little more.
That's what I.
Maybe I have a little more sympathy
Absolutely.
for this because at one point I was an advocate for the war in Iraq. Now, obviously, I've gone over there and I could see the craziness of what is our foreign policy today, and so I have a different conclusion. So maybe I have a little sympathy there because at one point I actually thought George W. Bush was doing us good in this world.
Yeah,
and then it was my eyes wide open during the
campaign on a
crisis.
non-interventionist foreign policy.
Right.
Well, boom, there you go.
Yeah.
Half the country goes. Anyone who campaigns on I'm that guy.
But 9/11 changed everything.
Yeah, everything. But no, I mean,
think how many good, solid conservatives were taken over by this view of the neocons that you have to be basically the world policeman and that the Fourth Amendment no longer applies.
Which is now most of the Republican Party and all of the Democratic Party is basically that mindset.
Yeah, but see, I think
until the Democratic Party is not in power. At which point they revert to kumbaya.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, to anti-war.
Let's be clear, right?
Isn't it amazing?
Granola eating, granola eating, Grateful Dead attending,
it's so
concert
amazing.
patrons, right?
It's so amazing. I mean,
and that's
it's gonna be hard
stroke,
for me. But... It's gonna be hard for me. Whatever, in next election, say they put in, dude. Oh my God! Everyone knock on wood. If McCain won, next election.
Oh, don't say.
Yeah, but dude, if that happened, it would be this thing where it would be a decade later, and I'd go, God, I'd wake up one day and go, I kind of feel like a Democrat today. You know what I mean? It would hit me someday. I'd go, that super anarcho-capitalist or classical liberal Democrat. That's kind of an oxymoron, obviously, but you know what I'm saying? I don't know. It's weird what it does to your soul.
If the Republican National Committee got that wrong again,
McCain, they probably will.
They will.
Like, think of the worst scenario and then bet on it, because that's probably what's going to happen.
I think Christie.
Christie?
Dude.
Like, they're going to put him on one of the new fen pills, and he's going to lose 100 pounds in 6 days. And then they're going to wheel him out Reagan style in a fucking cart or whatever. And he's going to sit up there and he's going to...
I think it's a possibility.
But if it happens, I think there's a split in the Republican Party. Because, I mean, you have McCain, a guy I didn't even vote for, by the way. And then you get Mitt Romney, who I wasn't a big fan of Mitt Romney, but, you know, Gary Johnson didn't have the traction, and it was really the choice vote for me.
I was this close to voting for Johnson, too, if
I
not
know.
for his beliefs.
I mean,
on
I think
You
about
both voted for Romney?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Do we gotta get various tomatoes thrown in our general direction?
Oh, yeah, but it's a funny argument because it's almost like, what's your favorite color? I'm Buddy the Elf. Like, you know what I'm saying?
I know, but
because you guys have such
Johnson, but not
because
for one
here's
issue,
my thesis, and then maybe I'll let you say something real quick. But like, I'm like, maybe I'll let you say something. But my thesis is that's just what we just established in the last 10 seconds is the evidence of the faith that you have in the statism-based voting process that I don't have any faith in. So it's just evident that you guys are like hanging on to that, and I see you guys clinging to this thing that doesn't exist, whereas you see me probably as a little more negligent of using strategy, and so that's where the gap.
Actually, no, I view it more as keep government more local. So I think actually more in the state.
That's what I'm saying,
really,
but you're clinging on to that. You're like, I'm going to write my fucking name on a piece of paper in support of Gang A versus Gang B, because I know that they're both as corporate as it's like signing up for a job at Target.
No, I know, but
you want to like be a farmer.
I
and you're
can't
like,
totally
I'm
disagree
loading
with
boxes.
you.
I have an RFID chip under my fingernail.
Well, I can't totally disagree with you when it comes to like who's
I'm trying
president.
to be obviously as extreme on one side as I can.
No, it's very obvious. No, I mean, you're not so far off when it comes to the presidential choices.
I'm trying.
But when it comes
hard.
to like the state of Minnesota,
sure,
and I'm choosing between this Democrat and this conservative Republican in this district for the House of Minnesota, I don't really think it is that case. Because I talk to these people, I know these.
I'm sorry, man. My analogy does not work on a state level.
Well, that's my point.
Completely formatted that versus what were we talking? McCain versus
right. So
on a state level, dude.
If I throw away my vote either way on the,
I got no funny analogies for state politics.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing is I view things. If we want this republic to be intact in the future, it has to be done at the state level. The federal government's so far gone, there's no chance up there.
Nullification.
Really
well, here's how I was going to tie it back for Benner, too, on the state versus federal, because he'd be good at that, and plus the Kokesh thing. I always think about, like, the ideas of, it's called federalism, right? Like,
sure.
1770s, 1760s, whatever. They're coming up with ideas of federalism where... It's kind of like, and we're not getting into religion, but it's kind of like the thing in religion, the ultimate philosophical contradiction, where they have if you believe God knows everything, then why do you pray or why do you act on free will? Because throughout even just Christian history, there has been times where free will was accepted later, because the predetermined predestiny was accepted before, and then it's actually flip-flopped a few times and stuff like that, right? Do you understand what I'm getting at all? So, like, basically in relating that back to, like, the Kokesh situation with the states versus federal, the federal government was supposed to only have any, like, let's call it jurisdiction. You can obviously, Ben, or correct me if I'm using wrong terminology, but between states in issues where the states could not autonomously figure them out themselves, right? Is that just real quick though? Sorry, I'm just want to. So with the Kokesh thing, I'm gonna fire up with what I'm getting at, and then I'll let you go for sure. With the Kokesh thing, he's loading his shotgun, right? So he has the Constitution, which is the ultimate law of the land. It's supposed to be the basis of it, or the documentation of that we're setting this government up on basis of the traditions of Magna Carta and common law and self-ownership and all these ideas put together in one charter. Sure. Right? Is that an accurate description?
Accurate. I would say.
So he's saying there's a Supreme Court case, which is what? Federal, right?
The Heller versus D.C.
Okay, is that federal?
Yep.
Okay, so then he's using the Constitution, which is federal and / state, but federal. He's fighting federal court, I think, but it's a DC law. So how the hell does that work when Kokesh, myself, and all three of us are guys that basically say we own ourselves, we're our own property. The closest autonomous state that we identify with is, let's call them our states, our 50 states. The federal government, if it doesn't abide by the Constitution, it comes to my state either nullifies it, ignores it. Well, that's kind of what nullifying is. It's just a document saying we ignore this shit.
Yeah, exactly.
But either way, whatever the answer is, we're saying local trumps national, which is a great expression. Yeah. So how can I support Kokesh, which I do, when doesn't it, what I was trying to elaborate to you, Benner, is doesn't it feel like I'm going top down now instead of bottom up?
I think you can support Kokesh because it's largely as a result of the federal judiciary overstepping its constitutional bounds. You can read Article 3 of the Constitution and see the powers of the judiciary, and they were much more limited to the powers that they have assumed today as a result of situations arising from even as early as the Marshall Court, the John Marshall Court, which took the notion that judicial review in overturning state law was appropriate, which was not any part of the Constitution and not even discussed. And when it was discussed, like in Virginia, it was actually refuted by John Marshall himself in Virginia. So it's largely a result of the expansion of the federal judiciary. The federal judiciary, by the Constitution, should never hear such a case, right? Unless it's the federal government that's trying to suppress his ability to do so. If it's the local authorities in D.C., D.C. has its own courts and always should. But just one more thing before I proceed is that you talked of federalism, right? It's true that the states got together and decided a certain subset of powers that would be more convenient to be held by an authority to delegate to that authority. Remember, the states were actually the originators of such power. They actually actualized those powers in, the Revolutionary War, etc. So that's where the power emanated from. It was never meant to make the federal government superior. Federalism means something completely different as it meant before. Now, when you say federalism, people just think, overwhelming centralized authority.
Yeah, and that's
right?
what's so creepy about it is like, if anyone ever wants to discuss federalism with me in any way, shape, or form, it does not feel like I ever assume that they're going to use it in that New Age context, because I figure no one that's smart enough to want to discuss federalism understands it in that context.
Yes.
Like everyone who ever talks, and then under the ideas of federalism, obviously, and I'm going, yeah, I got you. You don't have to define federalism because I understand it. But it is creepy because, Benner, you're fucking right. Like that's the context that it also encompasses right now. And how the hell did that happen? Well, I guess it's the same pattern that everything else followed, but...
And the Constitution was never supposed to give any additional powers than what it enumerated. That had been made clear from the days of the Pennsylvania ratification when James Wilson, in his famous State Yard speech, pronounced such. And when all the states ratified, most of them ratified with a text that said, we ratify with the understanding that the text of the Constitution does not give the federal government, or the general government, as that they actually call it more often, the general government,
in the what?
With more power.
When do they call it that the most?
In many of the founders and framers.
Just in their writings? Like in
it was never
in the
seen
Federalist
as a
Papers?
superior government.
Is that what they were calling the Federalist Papers?
The Federalist Governments was a series of proponency essays written by Hamilton Jay and Madison in 1788 during the summer when they were trying to convince the New York legislation to ratify. That New York was seen as a state that very well may not ratify, and was one that they exerted a particular effort to convince, right?
The general government.
Yeah, the general government.
It's almost like their version of the New World Order, man. They're like,
I use that
these
term.
states aren't going to be autonomous for long, so we better write this New World Order up before the New World Order writes the New World Order up.
It was considered an inferior government.
You know about the conspiracies of George Washington in the last couple months of his journal, writing about his Masonic lodges and shit, right? You ever read that shit?
Not particularly.
When he talks about how
1799?
He uses the term Illuminati, George Washington, and then he talks about how like the Masonic lodges, you can't even trust those anymore because everyone that was like a prominent figure belonged to a lodge, and they said you can't even like adhere to the privacy or like the trust of these lodges because they've already been corrupted by the Illuminati. So you're not working for the cause that you think you're working for, and so it's pretty interesting because then he died, and then you're like, whoa, shit, like. wow, that was kind of like people are like, there was George Washington, then there was all these other presidents, or Thomas Jefferson, and then there was JFK, and then no one else has been a president since JFK. Especially people that like the Fed conspiracies, because they're like, what do you think about JFK, real quick? Like,
I think JFK was actually a pretty underrated president in the regard that he abided by the Constitution, and he lived by his words on this issue. I mean, JFK was a pretty good orator, and I think he knew he was going to die because in secret societies, we don't believe in secret proceedings.
Yes, that's the best quote ever.
It's a great.
Oh
speech.
God, that's like my favorite presidential quote.
We're not going to overstep
JFK.
the bounds of the Constitution, and JFK actually was a tax cutter, something that's rarely brought up. He was an interesting guy, and I think that sometimes he is relegated to the position of, as a pretty decent president, but it's never mentioned in the context that he abided by the Constitution. And
I agree.
think
He's remembered for everything
context.
that was more like PR, and he's not remembered for anything that was like an action or a philosophical statement or philosophical option. So
Jake has strong opinions on that too, I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're gonna wrap this up real quick, but there's one more thing I want to get on, but on JFK. Well, first of all, let's try to do something like artistic real quick on the way out of this podcast here.
All right.
I want to talk about nuclear anything, okay? Nuclear anything. Mostly nuclear energy, but nuclear anything. See if Jake can do this, and we'll try our best, but let's tie in like JFK and nuclear anything. Can we do that or no? Is there any way? Any of us?
I think reactors were being built during his presidency and shortly thereafter.
And also
because nuclear energy for me was like, especially with the whole college mindset I used to have in like France, all their energy's nuclear, most of it, and like all this stuff.
Yep.
So, oh my God, like technology, like science it's very clean. And I've also heard there's bacteria that somehow eats radiation. Have you heard about this bacteria that they're working on and stuff? So like people think like, well, fuck, like eventually maybe we'll just culture all this bacteria and go into northern Iraq where all these kids being born with like 6 arms and stuff because we're dropping depleted uranium on them in the sake of securing Caspian Sea pipelines or whatever the hell you want to talk about, or central banks or opium wars in Afghanistan or whatever the fuck. But either way, they're going, technology will liberate us from this situation. That's like a theory, and I'd love to subscribe to that theory. Here is what I have to talk about. Nuclear energy, as we know it now, once you make it, as long as we know humans have been able to like farm, that's like a short period of time compared to the nuclear waste that we've created and how long it's going to last on this earth, and you're not going to be able to be around it. So unless you're shooting it to like asteroids that are going by or some shit like that, nuclear energy, I think, never gets the publicity on the dark side that it's supposed to get. And that's why I think companies like GE and stuff that use foreign countries to subsidize not only their manufacturing, but like their outsourcing of actually building power plant stuff. Look at your Japan or wherever. So my point is, I guess, is like JFK versus nuclear energy versus that whole transition of like we're moving to the moon and we're moving to this future technology. I don't know. Do you have anything to say or no?
Well, I mean, I'm not an expert on this subject matter, but I would say, like, first of all, you talk about disposal as the biggest issue in nuclear energy, which I think most people would allude to. But, I mean, the space on this planet is so vast. To think that you can't find a place to store this nuclear energy after it's been used for energy purposes.
Hold on.
Crazy.
I'm going to throw a ball. I'm sorry to interrupt, but, dude, do you think Chernobyl is about storing energy, or is it about you release this freaking pterodactyl of shit into the environment?
Like, how many people died in Chernobyl, though? I mean, it's like the worst. That's the worst.
Not the issue. It's how many thousands of people are deformed and dying because of it.
I mean, what are the stats? See, like, that's the worst. That's like the worst nuclear catastrophe.
Not even close. Fukushima is like 3 times worse.
So what's the disaster? Oh no, I mean, like, how many people are dead because of radiation in Fukushima? And how many people are dead in 3 Mile Island? I mean, like,
I don't know.
well, I mean, it's and like,
that's a big factor.
And then put it against
point.
like how many people have died in the oil wars, right? You know, or how many people have died in the coal mines? I mean, it's like,
yeah, but here's the thing, bro. How many people are going to be born with 3 eyes for 5
Do you know?
For 50,000
The question
years.
is, do you know though? That's the
Until
point.
they invent this bacteria, I don't know.
No, but see, like it's speculation to me. Like
That's
nuclear
all
energy
based
is
on Simpson premises.
right.
From the
Which
Simpsons.
part is? Which part is?
I just think
The
nuclear
three-eyed
power gets
fish.
a bad rap from the three-eyed fish, from the Simpsons nuclear
But whether it's
facility. We
depleted
just don't
uranium
see people.
or in Iran, or whether it's the like when Anthony Bourdain goes to Chernobyl and talks about like the whole communities and like what happened to the society around there, and you're thinking like
Like
we're
they
pretty
fled?
fresh. What's that?
Well, they fled, but I mean, like,
Yeah, but look at all the people that suffered because of Fukushima and the radiation.
Okay, but if
well,
you
that's
go...
more because of the typhoon.
Yeah, but either way, all I'm saying is like,
Like, my
don't you think
point here
nuclear
is it's
technology is
it's
like
efficient.
super risky?
No.
Because you have
Well,
to
every
multiply the disaster by the million years or whatever that's going to sit around.
Right, but I mean, like, like every energy source has some kind of risk. So let's look at a cost-benefit analysis because we're all logical people. And when you look at the benefits of nuclear energy, like how efficient it is and how it doesn't put any carbon into the atmosphere, like
Yeah, but
things
isn't
that-
it like
the Al
80 some
Gore
percent of all nuclear reactors in the United States are leaking into the soil?
No, I have never heard that before.
Well, I'm gonna write on this napkin.
And
the
like
next
this
podcast, whatever. I've just
You know,
read
the
some
federal
stuff.
regulations on that.
Oh my god!
And this mystery
I know,
is
There's a ton.
and this is like mystery that like
That's a good point.
nuclear power plants can explode like a nuclear bomb, which is nothing but a just like crazy assertion.
I'll just say, if you go to China, Midland, along the Yangtze River, nice. Along the Yangtze River, you'll see a river that is tainted permanently brownish black
Yeah,
from
chocolate.
chocolate, if you must say, by various pollutants. And people can't get drinkable water from that.
Okay.
That seems to me a much more devastating effect of pollutants rather than
And was
the
that
potential
coal
for
or
nuclear
what?
facility, coal and
Yeah.
fossil fuels. But
I mean, unless we live in this world where we just got a freaking shit ton of
And-
solar panels and wind turbines, which is going to produce half the energy.
And
that
almost
we
a
need.
half-
Eventually, it might if we
half billion-
if we invent capacitors that can fly airplanes. Because I think since like the 70s or something, we can fly electronic airplanes like 747.
Yeah, but where's
there's no
electricity come from,
capacitor. There's no capacitor that can hold the charge correctly, I guess, and there never has been because of the minerals or whatever used to build these electronic capacitors. So they're like, eventually, if someone can invent this is I've heard this for like 20 or yeah, I'm 28. I've heard it since I was 8. Lie. I've heard it for like 10 years or whatever, right? But it's something like yeah, exactly. I'm like 20 years. Like yeah, bullshit. You were looking at Where's Waldo when you were 8, teammate. But but no, I've heard like the capacitor
Waldo's
thing. Like,
in a nuclear power plant.
I've heard the capacitor thing. Like if you make a capacitor that can hold a sufficient charge, on the right time period, this and that, and the right mass the charge or whatever the hell however you measure it, then we've had the technology with engines and the distribution of electrical power to do anything we want compared to like an internal combustion engine. I heard it's just we
See, I
do
don't
not
believe
know
that,
how.
though.
I
Like,
do
if
because
that-
have you ever
if that
seen an
ex-
electric car take off? It beats the shit out of an internal combustion engine. Any of them.
If that's the case,
The problem is it's
we'd move
electric, and after 1 second, it's screwed. It does not
right,
put out
but
the
plus
energy.
electricity, but that electrical power came from probably oil or coal or nuclear. I mean, that's
well,
just
that's
the thing.
all.
like-
discussed.
Yeah, but what I'm
Right.
saying is if you build a capacitor and then you build 1 billion of them that can store energy, and then because like the Greeks could harness lightning energy in clay pots, and we don't know what they did with the energy, but they had lightning rods that went down to clay pots with like acidic water or whatever, so we knew they could have all these clay pots that held electricity, and we were like, what do they do, just shock each other, like rub your feet on the carpet? Like no one knows. But what I'm saying is if you could have solar and wind only on Earth, and you ever seen these tidal snakes they do in like England and Ireland? They look like giant hot dog chains, like sausage chains.
Okay.
And the joints have cylinders, and so like the wave, it's wave power. So every time they go up and down like like a wave or something, they're pushing cylinders and they're charging batteries. And so literally every wave in the ocean can generate power.
Yeah.
And so it's the problem is we just have never figured out how to store electricity in this energy. Which
Yeah, but
is
see,
free. It's free.
I'm all about finding new alternative ways of energy, especially if they're more efficient and
Yeah.
if they have a benefit to overall pollution in the atmosphere. But to me, until I see that, I still am led to believe that nuclear is probably the most least pollutant of all the energy types and most efficient. The only issue is the storage of nuclear waste. And, you know, it's like people make it sound like that this country's not vast or that the Earth's crust isn't vast. I mean, there's plenty places to store this
Eject
kind
it
of
into
stuff.
the atmosphere. We'll have the capability soon in the private market because NASA is kind of losing clout.
Do you know how much that shit weighs? Do you think you could really start injecting feasibly stuff into outer space as debris?
Yes, I do. If SpaceX has anything to do with it in the free market, I do.
But what kind of energy does it... I mean, anything's possible. I'm not saying I don't believe that that's not going to happen or anything like that. But I still think that, like, right now, the development in nuclear technology... And I think we'll all agree on this. If it's state-controlled, that's wise shit. It's probably going to be shoddy no matter what, just like the post office. We do not want our nuclear energy coming from the United States post office-looking motherfuckers. And that's what's happened. That's what's going to happen. It's the strictest regulations that you can get is nuclear energy. And I do not want Tim Robbins and Jacob's Ladder running my fucking nuclear power plants. And so I think, like... That's where I think I get so freaked out, and you're right. It might not be the whole nuclear energy thing because that's a scientific understanding of how to create energy versus who's managing it. And maybe you know what my fault is? I'm probably like so scared based on what's already been managed, and I'm like, these are disasters. When really I'm looking at the mismanagement of this technology, if that makes sense.
I would speak for like most people on this planet. You want the cleanest, most efficient energy that's available. And, you know, like these crazy carbon footprint crowd people, you know, like you can't drive a gas-guzzling SUV and how dare you use coal. I mean, it's just like this country can't be run on solar and wind power. But I'll tell you this much. There are like cabins now that are built out of solar panels. So
Amazing.
I love the fact
Amazing.
that I love the fact that we're
What a
finding
beautiful
that.
way to live.
Right.
Like
I
northern
love the
Minnesota,
fact.
like you have a solar powered cabin on the lake or something. You're just like,
But
beautiful
needless
way.
to say, that's not going to power my vehicle. I need an internal combustion
That's
engine
true.
that's running off of, you know, in this case, oil. But you know, you could also do it with natural gas. And honest to God, let's always explore and find better ways. But until
we'd
that
all agree,
happens,
yeah.
stop listening and letting these environmentalist wackos that have their own like perfect world in their mind and that all infringes on free markets, and stop letting them hijack the political discourse in this country and let us continue allowing the energy sector to thrive.
absolutely, dude. I heard the largest...
Those are my thoughts at like 10, was it like 10:30
Yeah,
at night?
we're wrapping this up.
The Red Sox just won the World Series.
Oh, shit,
Did they really?
Yes.
Oh, we need to have that on here.
We're wrapping this up. I heard the largest polluter in the world is the United States military. And I heard the largest private polluter in the world is European continental flights, if you can consider that a group.
I'm surprised it's not China or India.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but the
country.
United States defense budget is larger than the rest of the world's defense budget put together. So, something to think about. It's like,
Yeah, but
it's like how they teach. Here's what's funny to me:
That's
they teach
weird,
you
I
about the
don't-
British Empire, right? And then later incorporated with the British East India Company and the corporatization, I guess, of the whole movement or whatever. Yeah, the mercantilism. At that time, there was no organization in the world, Christianity included, that was bigger as far as the movements and the goods and the people and like everything like that. Like the British Empire was the biggest thing the world had ever seen. Now the U.S. Empire, and granted, a lot of the factors are not U.S., whether it's banking factors or whatever that support it, but let's call it the U.S. Empire still to this day. Whatever reviewing, there's a lot of factors, but let's call it that. I've heard that the U.S. military with all branches is the biggest polluter, and I've heard that all the European flights from anywhere in the European Union to anywhere in the European Union, that's the biggest private polluter in the whole world. Because if you ever looked on YouTube and there's a 3D, it's like a 60-second version of every European flight in 60 seconds. It's like a Google Earth view. It's so cool.
I mean, when you say something like that, what is that like compared to? Which branch of government of all governments of the world as the largest
No, it's
polluter?
tough
I mean,
because there's a lot
is that
of
crazy to
there's
think it's the
municipalities. There's there's
Yeah.
no way you can measure it.
I mean, like,
But it's a
China,
cool
China
thing
would
to
be
think
Free to believe being in
Yeah.
China that it's not the biggest
exactly. I
That
think
what isn't?
that China, as an aggregate, is a larger pollutant
Yeah.
defense
You
department.
think
so
so?
really, yeah. So it depends on what you're comparing.
You think
it to.
so? You think the coal that they burn that smogs their cities is comparable to the Fukushima radiation that goes around the world 3 times? Their coal
Yes.
goes 1,000 miles.
Okay, so using
or
your
less.
example, Japan's a bigger polluter than the Defense Department. Still are cases.
No.
I don't know where they get that from. It's to me that
you're right. Cause
Yeah.
because I don't know.
I question that big
I don't know
time.
either.
I don't have a AP history class citation in front of me. I don't.
I don't either.
All right.
So, all right.
Well, all right, man. It's getting late here. Team Mage podcast. Dave Benner, Jake Duesenberg, October 30th, 2013. We talked about everything from Adam Kokesh to energy to constitutional to beer to federal versus state rulings to everything. So we hope you keep tuning in. Thanks for tuning in. Team Mage podcast. Peace out, and we'll catch you next time. Later.
Yeah. Dude, that can be 4 or 5 podcasts.